And it's Aunt Elizabeth's fault. Every time we talk about the Five Nights at Freddy's series, we always talk about it from our perspective, where we have some sort of godlike ability to see a whole bunch of key dates, locations, and events that show us the Afton family storyline. However, we don't know the whole story, and we don't know everything. One key thing that we don't know is why. Why did William start killing? Some say it's because he lost his kids, but the time that crying child gets chomped is at the same time we can see Elizabeth get scooped. We can tell by the stomach mouth on the nightmare animatronics and the empty girls' room in FNAF 4's house, but what if only one of those was an accident? We know something happened to the mother of the Afton family. Maybe she left William for someone younger and a little less, child murdery. Or maybe she died in a tragic accident, like perhaps giving birth. We don't know which of the two young children is the oldest, whether it's the crying child or Elizabeth, but we can assume that it's going to be the crying child because he's older and seems to be a little more mature because he didn't, listens to his father and doesn't go touch baby. But if the Afton mother died while giving birth to Elizabeth, resulting in William resenting her for it and wanting revenge? Revenge in the form of a 7-foot-tall robotic clown baby. And at 9, brainwashed. We all know about The Immortal and the Restless, the vampiric soap opera from sister location that still has a better love story than Twilight. But what we don't know is what it means, if anything. Why would it be placed there? Why would the main character wear purple? And why would he keep saying the baby isn't mine? Well, there's a simple explanation for it all. Brainwashing. Okay, that answer is not simple in the slightest, but the community generally believes that this could be a representation of William, who is represented by the vampire in purple, and his wife, who is represented by Clara in the show, that perhaps one of the children isn't truly his. This betrayal could have resulted in William's first kill, since plenty of serial killers start out like that. But what if it's something more? What if, in reality, the baby isn't his because he stole it, or maybe kidnapped a kid and brainwashed him into being theirs, perhaps after losing a child? Or maybe he brainwashed a kid who saw Elizabeth get scooped, and in that moment of trauma he was in his most vulnerable state. It's not that outlandish of a story with child abducting and possessed animatronics coming from a Chuck E. Cheese parody, especially when that story has doors that make no sense. They shouldn't be closing with power. And it ain't the Mustard Man. Now, by no means is this an unknown theory, okay? I know that most of you will have heard this one before, but I want to remind you of it because it's not talked about very often and presents really interesting ideas that help solve a lot of problems. In one of his theory videos, matpat suggests that there is a very real possibility that the Mustard Man or yellow character we play as in the FNAF 6 Midnight Motorist minigame is not William like we've all been thinking, but instead could be Henry, William's business partner who ended up helping to launch the Freddy's restaurants and unintentionally starting his murder spree. I mean, the evidence is there and it makes a lot more sense than it being William. One of the most annoying parts about this lore is that Circus Babies isn't supposed to open until after Freddy's closes, but the girl's room in FNAF 4 is empty, thus implying that she was already snatched by Baby. But what if that was Charlotte? What if that room belonged to Henry's daughter, the puppet, the one killed by William? Then everything would make sense. That would mean that the crying child is William's son and Foxy Bro isn't Michael Afton. It changes so much but can make so much more sense. Go watch Matt's video if you haven't because he has more time to explain it than I do and he can do it way better. It was his theory, so. And its 7 original intentions. The original FNAF group of animatronics are seen as the first victims, the missing children from 1985, and the grandparents of all other dead animatronic possessing children. But what if we've been misunderstanding this the whole time? It was suggested to me by Jack that perhaps all they wanted was your help. You end up getting fired in that game for tampering with the animatronics, among other things. So you were messing with them. And from what we know about the series, you were trying to set their souls free. What if that's all they wanted you to do? Sure, you're playing as Michael, who looks a lot like William, their killer, but surely they would be able to see that you aren't him. They could be trying to get you to help, but they don't know their own strength because, they were children. And then they possessed animatronic animals with strength 10 times greater than theirs. I mean, sure, they scare you, but you don't actually see them lunge at you unless it's Freddy when you run out of power in FNAF VR. So maybe they're just trying to get your attention, because, you're looking at a screen. Damn millennial. I know he's not a millennial, but you know what I mean. And at 6, animatronic testing. We know that nightmare animatronics from FNAF 4 are hallucinations. We know this thanks to Nightmare Freddy's voice lines from Ultimate Custom Night, one of which says, "I am now given flesh to be your tormentor," and another one that says, "Now there is more than an illusion to fear," suggesting that before he wasn't real, but Now he is, because, you know, you're in hell. Now, obviously, William wasn't testing real animatronics, but perhaps he was using his son as an experiment for the illusion sound discs we hear about in the FNAF novels that make an appearance on Funtime Freddy's Insides and sister location. Perhaps before he made the Funtimes, he was testing the sound discs on his son in order to make sure that they weren't faulty, because, you know, a giant clown animatronic that's like 7 feet tall would definitely scare the absolute living crap out of any child that it's trying to abduct. So, it can use a disc to look friendlier, that's for damn sure. It could even turn itself into the most appealing thing to that child, which is insanely overpowered and sounds like it should be used by a politician. Also, I know this is not a new theory, but you really think I could come up with 10 new theories? Even with help, that would be hard, okay? Halfway through at number 5, Purple Guy Origins. The Mustard Man, or the yellow guy from Midnight Motorist, could possibly be Henry, but it could still be William. And while yes, you could explain the choice in color away as just Scott being Scott, I think that there's something more. Now keep in mind that this is my theory and that I have not seen this talked about online, so if you have heard this or any of these on this list before, I apologize. But we've been associating the purple guy with William Afton, yes, but it's always been the killer version of William Afton. There was a time before he started killing, so how could we show that this character had not been corrupted by anger and hate yet, when all we know about his visuals is a color? Well, change the color. I genuinely believe that the yellow guy from Midnight Motorist is William Afton before he started killing. He hadn't been corrupted by anger or hate yet. That's why he's yellow. Don't get me wrong, the books showed us that he wasn't a good guy, straight up kicking Elizabeth at one point from what I can remember, but he hadn't killed anyone at the time of Midnight Motorist. Sure, it kind of throws some holes into what we've originally thought, because we thought that he had just killed Charlotte, but we only think that, okay? It hasn't been confirmed. And yes, he isn't allowed into juniors, but maybe he was just banned from the bar because he's an angry drunk who comes home and kicks his children. We don't know. It's always a possibility, okay? And until Scott says otherwise, so don't come for me in the comments. Unless it's confirmed, you can't yell at me, okay? And at 4, MatPat working on the movie. The FNAF movie has been in the works for a while. Scott has been hard at work writing and rewriting scripts in order to make them worthy of production, since, you know, we all have extremely high expectations at this point. However, there was a recent conversation on Twitter between MatPat, our lord and savior of FNAF, and Jason Blum, founder of Blumhouse Productions, aka the company that's making the FNAF movie. They also made Paranormal Activity. There was a whole conversation between the two on Twitter where Jason said that he had discovered MatPat's theories and was in deep, saying that he's gonna watch them all 10 times. Eventually, MatPat responded saying that he would love to have Jason on the show to talk about the movie and ask him plenty of questions, such as if it's a lore story based on the games or books, or if it's just going to be another story set in the same universe. To which Jason said it would be amazing to come on his show. However, how would Jason just be learning about MatPat now? Okay, he tweeted out saying that he found it on September 1st. So, how did nobody mention him beforehand? But there's also the point of the audience. MatPat is a member of the FNAF community, but has more ties with the fans than he does with production companies behind the games. Meaning that if they really wanted to make the movie good, they would most likely bring MatPat on. And the fact that there was a blatant conversation really shows that perhaps this is what they've been doing for a while, or the whole time. It's probably a recent thing. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, we are Freddy. This one's also mine. There are a lot of weird things happening in FNAF VR, but you need to remember, in Help Wanted we play as a game tester for a game in the FNAF verse. So the game I play is different to the game I'm testing in the game I'm playing. Get it? So my question is, who do we play as in the game that we're testing? My theory is that we play as Freddy. Well, not the animatronic, but rather Gabriel, the child who goes on to possess the Freddy animatronic. Why? Well, honestly, because of the pizza party ending. When we enter the back room, we will see pizza and cake on tables beside us, and then Glitchtrap ushers us onto the stage. When we get out there, we get stuffed into Freddy, as made evident by the mic in our right hand. Also, this is my right hand. Don't come for me in the comments. I know I have a thing with directions, okay? This is my right hand. But the thing is, Glitchtrap is an anomaly. A literal glitch in the code. Like, he shouldn't exist. So, how is he able to control that ending? I don't think he does, or rather he uses that ending to collect our soul. The two game testers before us, Tape Girl and Jeremy, also have run-ins with Glitchtrap, but we don't know if Tape Girl makes it out alive, and we know that Jeremy doesn't. If you know this series, that name should be setting off alarm bells, because, well, We know from FNAF 6 that Bonnie gets possessed by a kid named Jeremy because of the gravestone ending. And here we are with another Jeremy. However, this one cuts his face off after seeing Glitch Trap with the paper cutter in another room. But what else do we see in the room with our pizza? Chica and Bonnie animatronics. Chica without her arm, and Bonnie missing his face. I believe Tape Girl was named Susie, and now Glitch Trap has 3 of the 5 original missing children, and he needs only 2 more to truly escape the game. And ultimately, in number 2, no plot. When Scott made the original Five Nights at Freddy's game, it was a last attempt, one final effort to become a game designer after years of having unsuccessful releases. Well, not as successful as FNAF at least. But FNAF absolutely blew up. It became so popular that everybody and their mom was playing or talking about it. Hell, my group even made part of our drama exam performance on FNAF in grade 10. But Scott never expected that. He released the second game 87 days after the first, and got everyone arguing over whether it was a sequel or a prequel. But did he even know? There are so many points that conflict with others from a lore and timeline standpoint from the original games to now, and while yes, Scott can't remember so many games in such tiny details, he couldn't have thought about this lore from the first game. There are many compilations of Scott listening to Matpat and Markiplier that make some wonder if Scott even knows where he's going with the series next. So far, he's just been putting out a load of short stories and not really focusing on Security Breach, the new FNAF game. But maybe that's because he doesn't know what to do next. Finally, in number 1, Foxy Bro and Crying Child. Now, this is my own personal theory that I haven't seen anywhere else on the internet, alright? If it has been put out there by someone else, I couldn't find it. So, don't hate on me in the comments. This is my personal theory, my evidence. I'm the one who researched this, okay? I personally believe that Foxy Bro and the Crying Child are the same person. I know it sounds weird, but hear me out before you rage at me in the comments, please. Until the release of the security logbook, we thought that Michael Afton was Foxy Bro, the one who scares the crying child using the ripped off head of his Foxy plush. Not cool, bro. But after the release of the security logbook, everything we thought we knew was upended. Mike somehow knew what the Nightmare animatronics looked like, but still knew about exotic butters and casual bongos. But how could this be possible? We saw the crying child die. And now we're back to thinking that Michael Afton is Foxy Bro because of the simple chewing gum Easter egg from the logbook and the recent Step Closer short story from the Fazbear Frights books. But what if it doesn't have to be one or the other? What if they're the same person? The logbook is constantly asking Mike if he remembers his name, if he can remember things like past dreams, or if the purple plastic telephone was his favorite toy. If he was alive this whole time, why would he forget these things? Why would he have so much in common with his brother that he even knows what the Nightmare animatronics look like? They were hallucinations. It doesn't make sense. It could be possible that after getting chopped by Fredbear in the pizzeria, Crying Child actually does die, but is then put back together by William like we thought at the start. Brought back, but instead of as himself, as his older brother, being implanted with memories that would make you feel guilty about killing your younger brother with a simple prank, making you stay away from the restaurants because being there reminds you of your brother, which was actually you, allowing your father to continue his killing spree free from your prying eyes. After all, before you died, you saw what he was. Remember what will happen if he catches you. It also explains why he would need to keep cameras on his children to make sure that they don't remember their name, who they were before death. And it would make sense that we view everything from Mike's perspective, hence why we see the 2 children together. We play as Mike, so of course we would see flashbacks and stuff through his eyes, and see ourselves with our brother, even though it's us, because we, as Mike, remember having a little brother. The nail in the coffin for me was actually a fairly minute detail I didn't think anyone else noticed or mentioned. The house as shown in the FNAF 4 minigames. The FNAF 4 minigames have you exploring your house as well as the path to Freddy's, but the thing is, we only see 2 rooms. We see our room, which has our plushies and such, and we see a girl's room, presumably Elizabeth's, but there aren't any others. Next to the TV there is a door, yes, but I have never seen a door that leads to a hallway, only a door that leads to a staircase to the basement or a door to a master bedroom. A staircase that went up wouldn't have a door, and we don't see one in the house. And there was no vacant room, so Mike couldn't be living in the basement. And he does live at home, since we see in the Midnight Motorist game he is sitting there on the couch watching TV. There is no room for him, because he was created after the Crying Child died at the hands of Fredbear. Crying Child is Michael Afton, and so is Foxy Bro. They're both the same person. The question is, did he ever remember? What do you think about that, matpat? You asked us to figure out what he was forgetting. I feel like I have it figured out, okay? He forgot himself. And at 10, Real Pizzeria. Before the release of FNAF 4, Scott Cawthon's website was littered with references to the numbers 8 and 7 in the source code. This caused many fans, and even dear old matpat, to think that these were references to the year 1987, where the famous frontal lobe bite occurred. However, other fans believed they were coordinates, so after plugging them into Google Maps, which I honestly don't understand how you would do that, I tried it and it didn't work. Like, did you just put all the numbers in, or did you like put spaces? Like what? Whatever. After putting them into Google Maps, they found that the location it gave was an actual pizzeria. Obviously, once this got shared, fans of the franchise started harassing the place trying to get answers, and while it might have been all one big coincidence, someone might have caught on before. Kathy Blockus reviewed the pizzeria saying, "The robots kill. I saw a robot fox killing a kid before in there. Run for your life out of there." Alright. Grammar. This was left 3 weeks before FNAF 4 was even announced, which is when all of the 8s and 7s appeared on the website. While this is incriminating, they also left the place a 5-star review, so I'm pretty sure they were just fans of the franchise. But could they be related? And at 9, Mangle was made from Ennard. This really isn't a popular theory. In fact, most people really hate this theory, but the theory suggests that Mangle was made after the events that occurred in the minigames of Sister Location, where Michael Afton barfs up last night's helping of Ennard's spaghetti. This theory seems to point out that Ennard now has plenty of loose and missing parts that could be used to make Mangle. I mean, this is the kind of thing Scott would do. But it was revealed that Baby was kicked out and then she reassembled herself, so I don't really think this theory holds much footing anymore. But it's an interesting theory nonetheless. Even if you hate the theory, you can admit that you kind of believed it would be a thing. If I had seen this theory before the other reveals, I would have believed it. And at 8, Dream Theory. Most of you had heard this one before. Everything we've seen in these games is a dream. Sure, Help Wanted gets kinda meta and kinda puts this theory to bed, but what if the things we are seeing are still a dream? What if it's not the crying child in his home or hospital room waking up every morning? What if it's William Afton dreaming about the insane things he plans on doing, and how well it will work out? Well, to him, it will work out well, because he's a lunatic. Time works differently in dreams. You can go a whole month of your life and then wake up and it's only been 6 hours. And sure, you're able to control your dreams, but that's very difficult to do, because once you realize you're dreaming, you basically wake up. So what if he's only considering killing children right now, and this is his mind telling him not to do it, or to do it, because again, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Or there is the other theory that we are still dreaming through Crying Child, where he's just now further into the dream, trying to justify what he saw so that when he wakes up he isn't terrified. Or he played the games and had nightmares about them, and now he's in the real world maybe? I don't know. And at 7, Real Life Links. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, the manager, is tallying receipts in the back room. While she does that, Bobby Stevens scrubs down the kitchen, and Sylvia Crowell, Ben Grant, and Colleen O'Connor all work on cleaning the main party area. However, there is someone hiding in the bathrooms, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap. Earlier that year, he had began working as a cook, before getting into an argument over his hours, which resulted in him losing his job. He was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen. Then he went into the kitchen where the bullet entered Bobby's jaw, sending him flying to the ground. Then Nathan went to the back where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains. Thanks to the security cameras, he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death, thanks to the testimony of Bobby, who actually survived the shot to his jaw. I got this theory from matpat of Game Theory because it was really interesting, and while it may not be true that the stories are linked, I still think the stories are so close it's impossible not to think about it. And at 6, the movie isn't real. We all know about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie supposedly in development by the same studio that made Paranormal Activity, but what if it's not really gonna happen? I can see something like this playing out where instead of making the movie, they say that workers died on set, causing them to halt production, and while it may get some bad press, a series about dead children possessing animatronics having real deaths associated with it would be incredible press nonetheless. Especially when the deaths are actually fake, because they only wanted to use the movie as a boost to like the games in the book. We haven't even gotten any word on a potential plot for the better part of a year, at least to my knowledge. And maybe the studio got the rights to the movie since they know how to handle paranormal press. Or they have a guy who can do that, something like that. I don't know, I just think that this movie would make a boatload, and since Scott loves rushing out games and books every other month, it's a surprise he hasn't made this one come out yet. Like, come on. And it's damn suspicious if you ask me. Like, what are you doing, Scott? Come on. And at 5, Withered Bonnie wants your face. In Withered Bonnie's jump scare in FNAF 2, we can see him reaching towards your screen as if reaching for your face. I mean, he is missing his, and the other animatronics attack if they see an endoskeleton. But if he had an exposed endoskeleton, why would he attack another one, since they're one of his own? Withered Bonnie is also essentially reaching for the Freddy mask that you have on your head that you just flop down, maybe thinking he can use it to prevent others from attacking him, since his freaking face is missing. Actually, now that I think about it, what if the reason they're attacking you is because they can sense the remnant in your body? Maybe in fact you got scooped before becoming the night guard at these pizzerias, and now you look like you should be in a suit because Ennard is inside you, and potentially exposed. I don't know, it seems like a hell of a stretch, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And at 4, you're the new killer. While yes, I did start playing through FNAF VR on the channel, be sure you go watch, by the way. Share and like that video if you want more, because I'm only doing that if it gets enough views. Because, God! Okay. Oh my. Okay, there they are. However, I already know the end. No matter what you do in the final battle against Glitchtrap, you end up getting stuck in the game while he gets out. And while maybe it's signifying that he is taking over your body or escaping the game, what if instead he is passing the baton to you? I mean, I've already said it. What if he's taking over your body, like physically controlling it while you're in the game? That means that you're the new killer, in essence. But what if being trapped in the game will drive you insane for eternity, until you do the same thing as he did and switch with someone unfortunate enough to play, turning them into code while you escape and plan on tracking down the man who took your life? I mean, it's plausible. Scott has always been known to not shy away from big twists and reveals, like he did in this game. He soft rebooted the series. And if this game was meant to be a soft reboot, wouldn't you becoming the killer be the ultimate switch up, and be one hell of a way to start up a new story arc? I think so. And at 3, the Cult of Afton. Another theory I saw from matpat. In Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbear DLC, you, at the end, are tasked with collecting 4 keys from a corn maze while Hollow Foxy chases you. Well, if you find all 4, a 5th one appears. A glitchy one. If you manage to get it, it unlocks a cellar, which looks like the barn that acts as the hub for the DLC. Well, this time it's torn up and looks like it's been decaying for years. And there's a bunny mask sitting on a table next to an unlit candle and a circle of potentially blood or candle wax. Well, put the mask on and your breathing slows and you relax, then the DLC is complete. When you head back to the prize counter, it's there and you can wear it again. But if you do this while holding Glitchtrap's plush, you start seemingly having a conversation with someone, but you can't hear the other. This leads Matt to believe that there is a cult forming around worshipping Afton, and maybe they are trying to bring him back from hell. And I mean, if Glitchtrap is supposed to be Afton preserved in code, we all know what happens at the end. I've already explained it. Gets out. Shh. And at 2, special delivery indoctrination. In the few cults that I've been a part of, we've always had an indoctrination, something you must complete before being able to join the group and ascend to the next level. But what would a cult surrounding praising a man who sends animatronics after children do? Obviously make you need to survive them. And sure, there are the normal games, but those don't compare to real life. You need something more mobile and accessible. Everyone has a phone, and while it's easy to stay in one place, you can actually move around while using the AR on your phone, making for a more difficult challenge, but also a more telling test of your skill and problem-solving abilities. Plus, they gotta know you can kill kids. If you've played FNAF AR, you are now in the cult. Welcome. Finally, in at number 1, ignore Help Wanted. Now finally, I'm still talking about the Cult of Afton. Maybe they're trying to get him out. Maybe they want to see him freed from his prison and back into the world. But how would they do that? By telling you the exact thing you need to do to let him escape, but by making it seem like it will defeat him. And who in this game gives you the directions to stop Glitchtrap that in fact lets him escape? Tape Girl. Tape Girl also sounds a hell of a lot like the girl who speaks when you wear the bunny mask while holding Glitchtrap, and maybe that's who we're even playing as. But the thing is, we don't know how long she's been a part of this. She might have been the whole time, hence why she's describing seeing the tester as being covered in oil with a mask laying on the ground instead of blood and his face. We don't know if she's been planning this from the start, so we can't really trust anything she says. This is my own personal theory, and if she says that the company hired Scott to make a joke of things, what if she's only saying that so when William gets out, they'll be looking at the company and not him? Maybe Scott is just fighting for the truth of things. I guess we'll have to wait to find out. Plus, I know that it's not Scott himself in the game, but his name hasn't been revealed, plus it's his photo, so I'm gonna keep calling him Scott until such time as it is revealed.
Number 10. 80s versus modern day. While many people are assuming that Security Breach is a new game when it comes to the timeline set in modern day, but for some reason taking place in what appears to be a very retro looking mall, it is equally possible that this game could be taking us back in time to the 80s, which might even make more sense considering that this seems to take place in a mall that looks like it's straight out of the 1980s in terms of its style, and that a quote unquote successful Freddy's location is still up and running. When do you think this game will be set? Modern day, or are we going back to the 1980s? Or will it be set in some other random time? Could you imagine like Victorian FNAF, but for some reason in an 80s mall? Number 9. The title. With many of the FNAF game subtitles, we've seen how much Scott Cawthon and his team seem to enjoy giving us a title with more than one meaning. In the case of Sister Location, the title was a reference to the fact that Circus Baby's entertainment and rental was a sister location of sorts to Fazbear Entertainment and their franchises when they existed, as well as additionally being the apparent location of your sister's spirit, as you played through as Michael Afton, William Afton's son, and brother to Elizabeth Afton, who was killed by Circus Baby and whose soul was then trapped within that animatronic. Number 8. Glitch Trap. While it is yet to be confirmed, many believe that Glitch Trap will be the main antagonist of Security Breach, or at the very least be featured as a growing threat within the game. This theory has come out of the fact that we know Vanny is supposed to be appearing in some capacity. Vanny was introduced in FNAF VR Help Wanted as the reluctant, semi-possessed follower of Glitch Trap, and many believe she will be attempting to continue to serve the suspected digital version of William Afton in this newest game as well. Number 7. Security animatronics. Just based on the look of the logo for Security Breach, some have made the assumption that we will see two different types of animatronics in this game, or possibly one type of animatronic with two functions. Either we'll have entertainment animatronics and separately security animatronics, or these two will be one and the same, entertaining during the day during the mall's operating hours and protecting at night. However, does this mean there will be opportunity for certain animatronics to help you in your potential recurring role as a security guard, or will it mean that you become the prey to this additional, perhaps murderous form of AI security? Number 6. Playing as animatronics. While it's been teased based on the webpage that we could be playing as a female security guard this time around, the dialogue hiding in the source code of the Scott Games website seems to imply that there might be more to it than that, and this game could be changing up the format somewhat. Hidden in the source code appears to be a conversation which is happening between two people. "Stay the course," one of them says. "I will," the other replies. "Focus on my voice." "I will." "Don't let anyone lead you astray." "I won't." "Have you selected one?" "I have." The last part of this conversation could be in reference to you as the nighttime security guard selecting a character, possibly an animatronic which you get to use as a tool during the night to help you monitor and deal with potential threats in the mall. After all, this game will possibly have a bigger map than the others, meaning you might need to recruit some help in your job keeping an eye on the location overnight. Number 5. Vanny. Another theory could be that this dialogue hidden in the source code on Scott's website is a conversation happening between Glitch Trap, the suspected main antagonist of the game, and another character who we know is supposed to be appearing in Security Breach and who recently was introduced in FNAF VR Help Wanted, Vanny. In Help Wanted, Vanny appeared as the reluctant follower of Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap is believed to be a digital version of William Afton and a virus, who became uploaded into the game during scans of old animatronic parts. Many believe that Vanny, seemingly spelled now with an IE at the end of her name as opposed to Y, according to a merching list seemingly spelled with an IE at the end of her name as opposed to a Y, according to a merch listing with the characters' names that reportedly appeared on Scott Cawthon's copyright page, will be appearing in Security Breach as a helper to Glitch Trap, attempting to help him find a body, animatronic or otherwise, that he can possess. A voice demo on Jessica Tang's Voices.com page listed as video game demo scared, frightened, afraid, young, female follower, obedient is believed to be a yet unused line of dialogue belonging to Vanny, who is played by Tang. The demo backs up the theory as it reveals Jessica potentially as Vanny saying, "I understand, I'll do just as you ask, and yes, I've already selected one. Number 4. Stitch Wraith Connection. In the books, a lot of FNAF lore has been expanded and even added in, with some of it connecting directly back to characters or stories in the games, but most of it remaining separate. Many fans are wondering though if FNAF 8 will be the game to connect the two worlds with a common character, one that appears in the books and is known as the Stitch Wraith. Well, it seems like the books still have a lot of story left to tell with this character that is slowly eking out with each new Fazbear Fright book. It is possible we could finally see this character connected to the FNAF games themselves in Security Breach, possibly via Easter eggs or a hidden game or cutscene. Considering the story might also be taking place in the past, it is possible we could even see the creation of Stitch Wraith come up at some point in this newest game, or a time-displaced version of the character who perhaps time-traveled back to the small location via the time-traveling ball pit, mentioned in Fazbear Fright's first book, Into the Pit. Number 3. Remnant. There's been a lot of lore that has been hinted at but never specifically flushed out fully, in the games at least. One such bit of lore that fans are hoping will be more explored, developed, and might even make its way into FNAF 8 Security Breach is a substance or object known as Remnant. Remnant is a collectible material in the FNAF AR game Special Delivery that allows you to power up your animatronics. It's believed to be a material that is responsible for giving an amount of sentient life to animatronics who potentially do not even possess the souls of the dead. It could either be a collective of souls melted down, or it could even be made, as matpat theorized, out of pure agony, which is then converted to Remnant and used as a power source of sorts. Remnant appears to be one of the substances used in the creation of the Stitch Wraith. Number 2. The Bite of 83 or 87? Yeah. Well, we think we know what happened with both of these bites when it comes to their story, which has been theoretically pieced together by fans of the series. What if we are wrong? Or what if we simply don't have all the pieces of the puzzle just yet? It seems odd that Security Breach appears to be set in the early 80s, close to the time of either these bites or potentially the same year, without the game featuring anything to do with either case. Some theorize that what we think we know about the bite of 83 might not be the whole or correct story. In fact, it could even be revealed that one of these bites actually happened at the Freddy's Mall location that we are about to visit in this game, or that there were more bites that happened in the 80s and that perhaps they were all connected by some unknown circumstance, specifically related to the running of the various Freddy Fazbear entertainment chains during that decade. Number 1. Clara Afton. People have theorized that the character who is advertised in the image on Scott's website is none other than William Afton's wife, and mother to at least Elizabeth and Michael Afton, Clara. Many refer to this character as being named Clara after the character who appeared in the soap opera the protagonist watches during his time off work in sister location, The Immortal and the Restless. Clara from The Immortal and the Restless is believed to be a character whose story alludes somewhat to Mrs. Afton. Some believe that in fact we will finally learn more about Mrs. Afton in the game, her life and death, and that we may even get to play as her. Her appearance, her blonde hair and green eyes are also referred to as potential evidence of her being the missing puzzle piece of a character currently referred to as Mrs. Afton or Clara Afton.
And a 10 glitch trap is William Afton. This one is fairly believable, so believable in fact that people actually consider it canon. However, there is no official canon source that confirms this to be the case. Referred to as the Spring Bonnie Man in the game files and the Anomaly by Tape Girl, glitch trap is a name given to that bunny rabbit thing by fans of the series, who linked the character to William Afton because of the golden Bonnie suit, which Afton used to kill children, the game file being called Spring Bonnie Man, his purple glowing eyes, and his similar mannerisms to William Afton. It is generally believed that Afton was able to get himself in the game by linking his memories with a circuit board that got scanned to eventually make the game. However, his soul is stuck in hell in Custom Night. While others may think that glitch trap is Afton, which is a reasonable assumption, don't think it canon yet until it gets confirmed, because we all know that Scott loves to throw wrenches into the lore, especially with this game. Like geez, just retcons everywhere. And at 9 competitors games. Help Wanted gives us 2 different explanations for the previous games, one from the company saying that Scott made the games on his own, and another from Tape Girl who says that the company paid Scott to make them. Now, straight up, I don't trust Tape Girl. Now, I don't trust Tape Girl. She gives you a combination of things to do that should have killed Glitch Trap, but it doesn't end up working, and if anything, resulted in you being trapped in the game forever. And I don't think that that was an accident. So what if the company is telling the truth, or at least as much as they know? The fan game Those Nights at Rachel's revolves around a rival to Freddy Fazbear's called Doug and Rachel's. Perhaps, instead of Scott making the games on his own, or Freddy Fazbear Inc. paying him in order to cover it up, what if Doug and Rachel's, or some other competitor to Freddy Fazbear's, paid Scott to make these games to advertise the deaths that they were so well covered up? I mean, it would make sense. We aren't thinking after playing these games, oh, this is funny, we should keep going to Freddy's. We think, why the hell should we bring our children here if so many kids have died? Sure, you may want Freddy's to be real, but that's because it isn't. If it was real and everything in these games really happened, you would be terrified to not only go out of this place, but set foot outside your home, just in case you got scooped out on the street. And it ain't FNAF 4. MatPat's theories on FNAF have remained fairly solid, constantly referring to the same things that he's already established. But actually, there was one theory where he flipped everything on its head, when he proposed that the FNAF 4 house is actually Henry's, and the Mustard Man from Sister Location is actually Henry instead of William Afton. And everything we assume that Afton was doing with the sound discs and making sure his kid doesn't go to Freddy's was all Henry's doing. There is evidence in the books to this, but if you want a better explanation, you should go check out Matt's video, because he does an incredible job and I really believe that this could be an actual thing. I also don't have the charisma he does, so... Since everything makes sense if it is Henry. His daughter is missing because Afton killed her, he locks Michael away so he doesn't end up getting killed, the footprints outside his broken window are Afton in the Glitch Trap suit because it's an older version of his suit. Hell, that could even support the fact that Glitch Trap is Afton, because he would have stored his early memories in the computer chips. Everything falls into place. It's incredible and it helps solve the timeline in one fell swoop. So let me know what you think below. Do you think the house belonged to the Aftons or the Emilys? Since in the books it's revealed that Henry's last name is Emily, which is weird. And at 7, real life fan game. The fan game The Joy of Creation is something I recently saw while researching another video, and it really intrigued me. The concept is that Scott Cawthon ended the FNAF series, and now the animatronics he created are coming after him for it. But what if that's what's happening? What if they are forcing him to constantly create more and more games, otherwise they will come for him? It's probably not the case, but what if something similar to this is happening in the games? Scott was the one who made the game in-universe as well, so what if Fazbear Inc. or whoever got him to make these games is sticking the animatronics on him to make sure he is producing as much as possible? Or maybe the animatronics on their own came after him when they learned what he was doing, thus encouraging him to make even more. And his friend in universe made The Joy of Creation as a riff on his games and his friend's experience. This is all speculation, so more of a hypothesis than a theory, but it's still an interesting concept nonetheless. And at 6, the next game. In the Five Nights fan games video, when I was talking about The Joy of Creation, I mentioned that we need a game where we play as William Afton and play through his story, at least the story that we know already, the killing of the children, the Revenant, then ultimately escaping in Help Wanted. But I said it should be a fan game, but it could actually be the next game in the series. If you think about it, it is entirely plausible. Scott always plans on clearing things up in his next game, so perhaps the way he clears up all the speculation as to whether Glitch Trap is Afton is by setting the game from his perspective, and only revealing its Glitch Trap after we close the door on the protagonist from Help Wanted. It would also make more sense to show us where everything is going since we've seen Glitch Trap escape, rather than reuniting souls or getting fired at the end, because this time we actually have a dramatic ending to the story and we will be following Glitch Trap's story in the future. So why not play as him? It would make sense in a canonical way as well as just storytelling. Plus, I really want to kill kids in VR, okay? Not in Skyrim. I want to do it in a bunny suit. Please! He gets out in every ending, so it only makes sense. And at 5, Special Delivery. Last time I talked about Special Delivery, it was about it being an indoctrination into the cult of Afton. Perhaps instead, it's the game with the biggest lore hints to date. I have the game installed, but I haven't played it yet, so I'm not entirely sure, but it could be a good theory. The guy who does the commenting in Special Delivery is the same man who is talking during Help Wanted. So this means that it is canon that they send animatronics to your house, and they do so while they know they can attack you. So this could be them trying to repair their reputation, but they never stop sending you animatronics after you getting attacked. So maybe they just don't care. The implications are incredible. So MatPat, get on it because I really don't have the time for this. I need to come up with 10 of these a day. You do like one a week, so passing it off to you. And at 4, building animatronics. I believe that in a future update for special delivery, you'll be able to build animatronics. I don't believe that this is a feature as I'm writing this, but if it is, I apologize. In the game, you are able to collect naked endoskeletons. It is my belief that you'll be able to add on to them in the future, allowing you to make robots to help defend yourself or find remnant. This would also help establish this as being possible in the lore. We will do more of the creating Dreadbear minigame, since that established the principles on how to do it, at least in that scenario, which may not convert well to AR, but still. And at 3, creation. This is a theory I saw posted in the comments of the last part of the series. Coming from Carvey16, they think Glitchtrap is a piece of living code in Help Wanted, which is true, and they also seem to think that he may bring every other animatronic within the game to life. Now, for some reason with this last game, it has opened the door to so many fan game tie-ins, but this sounds like it could be possible. I mean, if he can escape and materialize into the real world, potentially through your mind, what if he can bring the other animatronics with him? Sure, they exist in the world already, but he could bring them out into the real world, where Scott would have to fight off a horde in the style of Joy of Creation. I know it's a stretch, but if you want that as your headcanon, play Help Wanted and then go play Joy of Creation, and then BOOM! You have an ending to the series. And at 2, FNAF World. I know the general consensus on FNAF World is that the game wasn't really all that good, and that's okay. But matpat in another theory pointed out that the things we see play out in Help Wanted were established in FNAF World. Technology that can interact with the real world, code manipulating the outside. Those things happen if you linger on the first dialogue screen long enough to get the mission to find the clocks. You set up the clues that you find in the FNAF 3 minigames. That's why they're legit minigames, because you've entered the code of another world. Perhaps this world is where Glitchtrap's from. Moving away from the game theory and onto my own personal ideas, since Purple Guy in FNAF World talks to us saying he's not the Purple Guy we know, maybe he's not. But perhaps he's the one we end up seeing being put into Help Wanted after they took code from another computer chip, which could have had the remains of FNAF World on it, because he deleted it off Steam, but he couldn't have deleted the whole game. This is actually quite compelling now that I think about it, because it would be another Afton, but not the same one as before, and as we all know, he always comes back, but maybe not the same way. Finally, in at number 1, Help Wanted's Dream. I talked about Dream Theory last part, and this isn't really what this point is about, but I feel like it's important to address it. This game could be a dream, but instead of Michael's, it could be Afton's. What if this game is actually about William's descent into madness, or somehow showing us that there are 2 Williams at the same time, perhaps like I suggested in my last theory. Let's face it, the only person who could have been at all these locations is William, and after all, some code was used from the old chips to supposedly make Glitchtrap. So what if that code also generated the scenes we see in game? One of the only people to go to all locations would have been Afton to kill kids. He would have been repairing animatronics since he needs his killing machines. He would have also had to contend with the plushies like the dark rooms. And at the festival where you see Dreadbear. You can even see Glitchtrap dancing on the hill next to the FNAF 4 house. However, the key to this puzzle, since Dreadbear may not be canon, is the final minigame. The pizza party minigame involves you roaming around the FNAF 1 location trying to find someone. However, if you end up going through the right door, you'll end up in the back room getting pizza and cake. However, when you do, Glitchtrap will appear coercing you into where he will ultimately kill you and stuff you in a suit. But who would have seen this? Nobody but Afton. You clearly play as a child in this game due to the giant scale and the stuffed ending. However, he is the only one who would have known about this event, meaning this game could all be a part of Glitchtrap's mind, or technically William's. In at 10, Puppet was first. The puppet's origins were first explored in FNAF 2. The Give Gifts minigame is what made us first imagine that the puppet was the one giving life to these animatronics. And we were right about that, but we also thought that the puppet was the one putting the bodies in the suits, and that the puppet was the first child murdered outside the pizzeria. However, now we know, thanks to the Ultimate Custom Night game, is that this isn't the case. In Ultimate Custom Night, all the FNAF animatronics get voice lines, making this the first time we've heard many of these animatronics talk. Nevertheless, in the game affectionately referred to as UCN, when killed by Chica, you can hear her say, "I was first, I have seen everything," indicating that she was indeed the first victim of William Afton, which kinda threw off the timeline and made everything more confusing, but that's Scott's specialty, isn't it? In a 9, timeline. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is a complicated mistress, with plenty of conflicting events and contradictory sentences throughout, but that's understandable. You can't keep track of 10 games worth of lore when you weren't planning on making 2. So understandably, things get confused and dates get mistaken, but that in essence essence means that every timeline you can think of, unless it takes into account all information and places it without any conflicts, is proven wrong. It's weird, I know, and that's basically me saying that matpat's timeline is wrong, but hey, it's fine. We're getting new things on the regular, and it looks like Scott has abandoned that timeline anyway. Hell, it may totally be worthless, okay? Since apparently in universe the games were also created as a way to make fun of the events, so everything could be a lie now, if the games in universe are the same as the ones we played in the real world. And it ain't purple and pink. Way back in the FNAF 2 days, there was a debate over two different killers. However, this time they were the purple and the pink guy. The pink guy was present in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, and since he was a slightly lighter shade of purple, they were instantly different people, and then we had two killers to deal with, which technically would have been a settling thought since one person wouldn't have killed all those kids. However, this isn't the case, as proven in the Freddy Files, an elongated strategy guide created by Scott Cawthon himself. In it, it says that in the Foxy Go 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 minigame, quote, purple guy can be seen in the corner, which very quickly proves the pink guy stands wrong. I believe that this was a debate where people were like legit fighting over this, and then dismissing anything if it didn't mention that there was a pink guy and a purple guy. It's nuts, okay? It's good to have a fan base that's dedicated, but it can also lead to a very toxic environment. And at 7, the man in purple. Remember the dark days when we didn't really know anything about the purple guy other than he killed kids? Yeah, those were the times. And remember when we, thanks to matpat, thought that the purple guy was phone guy? Oh yeah, those were dark days indeed. This theory started when YouTuber Game Theory, also known as matpat, posted a video on his channel talking about one small detail that nobody seemed to notice. How the purple guy from Foxy Go 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 was smiling, and that the phone guy had a fascination with Foxy. And how the phone guy thought that the puppet was creepy, and purple guy would think the same thing, because at the time we believed he was his first victim. This was later disproved in the Silver Eyes when the killer was revealed to be one Sir William Afton. Obviously in the book he wasn't referred to as the purple guy, but at this point we had proven that there was only one killer. And in the story, Willie was the only killer. This was also confirmed to be the identity in the in-game universe in FNAF 5 sister locations. So, sorry Matt, but purple guy is indeed not the phone guy. I wanted it too, don't worry. And at 6, Michael Afton. We can't get the identity of Michael Afton down. At first we thought he was the crying child's older brother, then thanks to the survival logbook it was now the crying child, and now after that with the release of the 4th Fazbear Frights book Step Closer, it's the older brother again because Michael chews gum and the older brother in the story chews gum, and the older brother in the story had his hand turned purple, and Michael Afton turns purple, and they're both older brothers. Great. I personally think that the older brother and the crying child are both Michael Afton, and that he was just rebuilt as a robot. Click up in the top right corner to see my full explanation that I will believe until it gets disproven by Scott himself, be it in another Frights book or in a new game, okay? I want a canon source to say that I'm wrong, and then I'll stop believing it. Halfway through number 5, Mike is purple guy. There have been plenty of debates online once more pertaining to the identity of purple guy after the release of FNAF Sister Location. The confusion came after the end of Sister Location when Michael is walking around and turns purple. This caused a whole load of people to consider the two individuals the same person, even though those same people thought that since they were slightly different shades of purple, there was a purple and pink guy. These two are also different shades, but now they're the same person? What? Anyway, the real answer here is just that the purple guy is just a shadow. He's not physically purple like Michael is. William's purple guy is a shadow that couldn't be colored black because the background of FNAF 2's minigames was black. So the shadow was instead colored purple. The purple guy is William Afton, but Michael Afton became visually purple, okay? There were two purple guys, but only one that is like actually purple. You get it? This game is not confusing at all. And at 4, William is dead. We always thought that William was dead. This guy has died more times than Sarah Lance, but as we all know, he always comes back. Some people thought that William died after the spring locking in FNAF 3's minigames, and some of us thought he died in the FNAF 3 fire, and the rest of us thought that he had died in the fire from Pizzeria Simulator, also known as FNAF 6, since we later see his soul in Hell and Ultimate Custom Night, constantly being tortured by the one you should not have killed, Golden Freddy or Cassidy. But now he's alive again, at least his mind or soul is in the form of Glitch Trap, or I guess you would call it his essence? That sounds nasty. But he was also proven to be alive again thanks to the Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call and the story The Man in the Room 1280, where we see a man with horrible burns on his face and body and an iron will to live, where we learn that William is actually being kept alive by the spirit of a dead child that possessed him instead of an animatronic? What? That explains why he always comes back, and how he survived for 30 years trapped in a back room that was sealed off. Man, this series just gets simpler and simpler, doesn't it? Getting close to the end in at number 3, Crying Puppet. Way back in the early days of FNAF, we were still trying to piece together the convoluted story that would soon turn the world on edge. However, the main issues with this are us not knowing what we do now. We didn't know Henry had a daughter, we didn't know Henry existed, we only had 2 games to go off of. And while that led us to some interesting conclusions, like the purple guy being the phone guy, it also led those conclusions to be wrong as more information got exposed. For example, in FNAF 4, we thought that the crying child that was introduced became the puppet. This was thanks to the design of the crying child's shirt looking similar to that of the puppet's sleeve, and the crying streaks down his face were similar to that of the puppet, which makes me think that honestly we didn't realize how stupid that was. Like, why would the design details matter if the puppet was made before the crying child possesses it? And if it wasn't created, then that would have meant that the crying child would have created it when he died, which would make more sense if we were using visuals as evidence. Oh well, it's been proven to be Charlotte anyway, confirmed in FNAF 6 security puppet minigame. In it 2, 83 versus 87. FNAF 4 is one of the weak points when it comes to discerning or decoding the FNAF timeline, which is nearly impossible at this point. This game has so much debate about who the characters are, where it takes place, and hell, even when it takes place. Yeah, people were legitimately arguing over if the game took place in 1983 or 1987. 87 would make sense, considering how we see a bite at the end of the game when the crying child dies, and then the only other time we've heard about a bite in game is the bite of 87, where someone gets their frontal lobe bitten off during business hours. However, the television screen showing the Fredbear and Friends cartoon says it's only 1983. This debate was put to rest when Scott confirmed the previous game's date and sister location. He likes to do this thing where he clears up some things from previous games on his next one, and the biggest debate from FNAF 4 was the year. So he showed us that it indeed took place in 1983 by using that number as a secret code that unlocked security cameras in sister location that showed the various places in the FNAF 4 house, like the crying child's bed, the closet in his room, and the plush trap hallway. Finally, in at number 1, Mic Trap. This has got to be my personal most frustrating debate in all of FNAF lore, okay? This debate also arose at the same time as the purple guy debate. They go hand in hand. At the end of Sister Location, the secret ending, Mike has a little speech about how he's supposed to be dead, but he isn't, and that he's going to find his father. The debate comes at the end of that scene, where Mike says that I'm going to come find you, and then Springtrap pops out of the ruins of Fazbear Fright. This caused some people to believe that the act of Springtrap popping out was Scott's way of saying that they're the same. However, it was only to show that dear old dad hasn't kicked the bucket, and that you unplugging his life support didn't do anything because he's being kept alive by the soul of one of his victims. The whole Mic Trap Club was disproven by Scott himself when he said in a post on Steam to take a look at matpat's explanation for Mic Trap versus Glitch Trap, which is kinda dumb because like you can just say that he's William, not Michael, but it's also kinda nice because you generated traffic for his video. I mean, wanna give us that same treatment, Scott? Please? MatPat also concluded that Springtrap was good ol' Willie Afton.
And at 10, the puppet origins. Ever since FNAF 2, we've been introduced to the puppet. We were trying to solve the question of how this puppet came to be. First, we thought it was the girl Afton murdered in the Take Cake minigame, and then we thought that it was the crying child from FNAF 4. However, the original theory was actually confirmed in FNAF 6 with the security puppet minigame secret ending, where we as the puppet are looking for a child with a specifically colored bracelet who ends up showing up outside the pizzeria. We make our way out to her, but when we get there, she is already dead, killed by Afton on his way home from killing Susie, since we know that Chica was first and has seen everything. We crawl over to this girl, soaked and broken because of the rain, and we lay with her, then merge with her. And so Charlotte, the daughter of William's business partner Henry, merges her soul with the puppet in order to give gifts and give life to the others so that they can end William Afton's killing spree. I actually think that all the minigames required for the Lore Keeper ending in FNAF 6 are a sequence of events that happen in one day. Willie kills Susie in the Fruity Maze minigame, luring her away with the promise of her dead dog being alive, then while on his way home stops at Fredbear Family Diner but sees Charlotte and kills her like we see in the Security Puppet minigame, and then heads home later that night as we see in the Midnight Motorist game, which is actually named later that night in the game files if you didn't know. And at 9, Cassidy. The mysterious identity of Golden Freddy has been bothering us for the better part of a decade, so it's obvious that finding the name of the child who possesses him would be a grand challenge. Well, in the security logbook we found that challenge. A whole book dedicated to revealing the identity of the one you should not have killed. In the book there are numbers constantly out of place, and each page that has numbers incorrect also has faded text saying my name. However, this isn't Michael writing, since he writes in red, so obviously it must be someone else. Something else.
Golden Freddy. Putting the number clues together, we get 5, 2, 3, 9, 1, 5, 7, 2, 10, 11, and 8, 11. Which, as user DPowerful1 on Reddit pointed out, if you use those numbers as coordinates in the word search, you can spell out the name Cassidy. This was shown to be correct with the constant use of Golden Freddy's signature line of "It's me" used over and over in that word search, plus now that line of "It's me" makes a hell of a lot more sense. It's me, the one you shouldn't have killed. Cassidy was also mentioned by name in the final FNAF novel, The Fourth Closet, described as a girl with black hair, and the only human child in the logbook is a girl with black hair, being given cake by the puppet who is trying to give her her happiest day as suggested by the question on that same page, but also relating to the happiest day minigame where we try and settle Golden Freddy's soul. And at 8, the websites have conversations. Over the years, the way we found clues to the lore of these games has evolved. It started with reading newspaper articles on walls, then moved to analyzing minimum wage payments, and even went so deep as to investigate the real name of a teaser image using Notepad. But on the way to these extreme lengths, we started investigating the source code of Scott Cawthon's website. It started with the numbers 8 and 7 appearing multiple times, which led people to think it was about the bite of 87, as well as finding a restaurant on Google Maps everyone thought was the inspiration for Freddy's. One fan even went so far as to comment, "I saw a robot fox killing kids in there," even before anyone knew about it. But they also rated it 5 stars, so I guess they were probably lying. However, in between the release of Sister Location and FNAF 6, Scott's main 2 websites, ScottGames.com and FNAFWorld.com, had an argument where Baby basically got voted off the Ennard Island, hence why she and Molten Freddy are separate again in FNAF 6. The theme of the website's talking has been used again. Recently it had a conversation with itself on Scott Games, where someone, presumably Vanny, the new killer, is talking to Afton, or the voice in her head suggested by the conversation we hear between the mask and Glitchtrap in Help Wanted. And at 7, William Afton is Glitchtrap. While this may not have been confirmed by Scott Cawthon yet, in my opinion it has basically been confirmed. While everyone assumed that the character in the game files known as Spring Bonnie Man was William Afton due to a similar costume and the name in the game files, it was mostly just a well-supported theory and speculation. However, with the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, it has basically been confirmed. While in the main hub for the DLC, you can see the house from FNAF 4's menu on the horizon, and if you complete a series of tasks in blacklight mode, you can actually spawn Glitchtrap dancing on top of the hill near the FNAF 4 house. While this in and of itself could be enough, I think the real kicker is the car. The way you get this Easter egg is by pressing the button on the monitor and then looking at the car for 10 seconds. And it has to be the car, just looking away won't do it. Before you do this, however, the car's lights are white, like normal headlights. However, after the Easter egg is activated and you return to normal mode, the car's headlights change to purple. Scott always makes it a point to clarify things in his next game, and this is his way of showing us that Glitchtrap is none other than Purple Guy himself, William Afton. The car headlights are purple. What more do you want? It's probably his car from Midnight Motorist. And at 6, Afton is in hell. Ultimate Custom Night is one hell of a challenge, but the fact that this game got picked apart so quickly is shocking but also understandable, since every time you die in this game you get a line of dialogue revealing more hints about the lore, and you die a lot in this game, especially if you're going for that secret ending with like 49 animatronics all at level 20. Jeez. But these lines hint that we are somewhere that won't allow us to die permanently, only over and over, and somewhere that our character is not liked. Obviously we play as Afton, since even Nightmare Fredbear himself says these people aren't our friends, and Afton is the only character that deserves hell, like Henry says in the final moments of Pizzeria Simulator.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
That old friend is obviously William, since it was accompanied by the image of Springtrap burning, who is William, not Michael. Halfway through number 5, FNAF World Clues. Admittedly, this wasn't really a theory, just more of a good eye, but after the main story of FNAF World was discovered, where you find the clock and put the pieces in place for the player in FNAF 3, people figured out what that was fairly quickly. Sure, it had come out after FNAF 3 and everyone picked it to shreds, but it's still awesome to see a community working together so well to put something so weird and at the time so convoluted together to make sense of a game that at that point was 3 games old. And if we can do that quickly, it was fairly obvious that we were going to do that in the future. To be fair, we didn't know why or how we were setting these things up until later, but now that the sentient game code affecting the real world is canon in the games, I think the fact that another plane of existence where the at-peace children were staying to give you the ability to destroy the man who put them there is fairly evident. At least that's what I think. The kids who didn't possess anything ended up going to that plane and they were helping bring the others there, but that's not confirmed, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. And at 4, the crying child. When everyone was talking about Michael Afton being on a mission to atone for his father's sins, I thought they were talking about the crying child originally. Hence why I would always be so confused and only really got into FNAF when I was able to be explained with Remnant and him being a machine, which is weird because that somehow explained it. I didn't know that everyone thought that the gray-shirted guy who threw Michael into Fredbear was actually Michael. So I guess one of my theories was technically right. Even though it was just confusion and me not really listening or understanding, but later on it did get clarified and I changed my view. But then it got revealed that he was the crying child in the security logbook with the lines "the party was for you" and "was your favorite ride the carousel." The main one being "the party was for you," indicating that Michael was the child who got shoved into Fredbear at his own party and got crushed when his tears moistened the spring locks. Pretty freaking crazy. Just like this whole series. And in 3, Michael is not Springtrap. After matpat made his video about the FNAF timeline, where he put everything he could together into as cohesive of a story as he could, Scott actually decided to confirm a few things for us about that video, saying, quote, "For those of you who were really upset about the idea of Mike Trap, or upset about the idea of Purple Guy being literally purple, or hung up on the 1983 versus 1987, watch matpat's video." And since in that video matpat says that William is indeed Springtrap, and provides all the evidence for such, you can all abandon the idea of Mike Trap. It's not happening. Scrap Trap is not Michael. Springtrap is not Michael. Drop it. And a 2, FNAF 4 date. Using the same quote as last time, Scott confirmed saying that matpat was right about the whole 1983 versus 1987 debate. And in that video, matpat also talks about the fact that FNAF 4 takes place in 1983 as indicated by the television Easter egg and the secret cameras and sister location using the keypad combination of 1983, 1983, where the camera showed the different areas you play in during FNAF 4, Plushtrap's Hall, Michael's bed, and the closet that Foxy and Mango decide to assault. So basically matpat got almost everything right in that video. Scott also said it's obviously not 100%, but he really hits this video out of the park. Now it's only a matter of figuring out what he got wrong so we can fix it. Let's do it together. Yeah. Team power. Finally, in a number 1, William Afton is Purple Guy. This is an oldie, but a goodie. The character at first only known as Purple Guy has gone by a lot of different names. Purple Guy, the Phone Guy, Vincent, the Killer, Pink Guy. However, way back in 2016, matpat predicted the name reveal of William Afton thanks to his mention in the Silver Eyes novel. Then once Sister Location came out and the name of Afton was dropped, he was fairly clearly happy about it. I would be too. If one of my theories about these godforsaken games ends up being correct, I may lose my mind. So while the fans of these games wanted to dismiss the books and treat them as an entirely separate canon, you can't do that entirely. Sure, some things are different, like his first victim being Henry's son Sam in the book, but in the games it's Susie, and the names of the original 5 children being different, it's still important to consider them when crafting theories. So while you may hate on matpat or hell even hate the books for that matter, one of the biggest reveals in the game came from him and those books. So, take a chill pill, relax, and remember that it's just a theory. A theory that you don't have to believe until it turns out to be true. So don't hate, appreciate the effort that people go to in these kinds of videos. Jeez, don't hate. There's no point. Worst thing is that he's right, or that he's wrong. Who cares?
Number 10, Scott Cawthon. One of the biggest theories that I think most people are still hoping for, even given the controversy that surrounded the game's creator, is that Scott Cawthon himself will appear in the film. At least, hopefully his voice will. Many people have theorized and are hoping that Scott will appear as the Phone Guy. Some fans have even said that casting anyone else would be a disgrace, a travesty, because Scott honestly just nails it as Phone Guy and is basically irreplaceable to them. I feel like there are other performers who could also do a good job in that role, but I agree that Scott's portrayal has pretty much become iconic, so not having him in the role if Phone Guy does appear would be disappointing. I too hope we get to hear that familiar voice in the film. Hello, hello! And friends, before we move on to this next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love it when we do FNAF content, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Number 9, FNAF 1. Some have theorized that the Five Nights at Freddy's film will start at the beginning with the plot of the first game being the focus of this film. The first game had us in the role of the nighttime security guard and confined to one space, the office, where each night began with a phone call from the previous security guard that we're taking over for, the Phone Guy, who in his last days, likely his literal last days, even alive, recorded messages to help us learn our new role and stay safe. I don't think this one will be quite as literal of an adaptation if we get it, but I could see us getting the plot of a new security guard coming in who starts to notice strange things happening at the pizzeria pizzeria that end up leading him to make a bloody discovery. However, I'm not sure if this will be Michael or not and what role the kids in the film might play. Will they simply become victims, or will they possibly defy their in-game fate with the new security guard teaming up to help save them? Number 8. Death by Suit. This is one we are all expecting will be headed our way for sure. I mean, considering how this is supposedly the end we are threatened with should we not be diligent enough during our first night shift, I think it's no surprise that people have pondered this might be the way someone goes when it comes to one of the deaths that we're gonna get in this movie. I think most fans are hoping that they will be pretty gruesome deaths. Now, they don't have to be super gory to me really, but they do need to be creative in how they show or don't show but imply deaths in the film. And one of the worst ways to go would be the one simply that Phone Guy warns us of. How if the animatronics catch you, they might think you're basically an endoskeleton outside of your suit and then try to shove you in one. Which is a problem because you can't fit in a suit that has all the stuff in it that isn't pulled back, so ugh. Number 7. FNAF 6. I actually really love this theory for the Five Nights at Freddy's film. Pizzeria Simulator I think would be an amazing game to see brought to life because, well, I just think it would be a lot of fun. Think of the tapes that we watch that are in there to train us on how to best run our pizzeria and welcome us in. How much fun would it be to incorporate all that cheesy goodness into the movie? I personally would be super here for that. And then the end of FNAF 6 is completely horrifying with the fire at the pizzeria pretty much engulfing everyone and supposedly freeing all of the souls of those possessed animatronics. Although, it still isn't really clear if this actually worked in terms of the lore, considering that some of those souls seem to perhaps still be lingering around. Anywho, it seems unlikely that this will be the case, considering that many people already think, based on what we've seen, that the film will be more inspired by the first game. But it could be cool to see some of those cheesy elements at least incorporated into the movie. After all, the movies don't have to match the story or even sequence of actions from the games. The story for the films could basically be completely different, but simply inspired by that first game, with influences from any number of the other games woven into it. Number 6. Saved by the Mask. Of course, when it comes to the games, we all want to see that death by suit, but another thing that a lot of fans are theorizing and hoping for in the film is that we will also see someone else, the main survivor likely, dodge this type of death by donning an animatronic head or mask. I personally would love to see this. I think this addition to the second game was super helpful and almost just as terrifying at times as getting jump scared. The anxiety that builds up is palpable when you put on that Freddy head, and even the visuals that you get as you peer out from the two cutout eyes and hope that you acted fast enough to avoid that jump scare, I mean, it really is exhilarating and terrifying all at once. And imagine the perspectives that we could play with in the film, seeing this action both from the inside of the mask and perhaps from the outside as well. Also, there's just something terrifying about a person, not wearing like a full suit but just a mask, well, like dressed normally. It's just odd and off-putting, to be honest to me. I both kind of love it, but I'm also kind of terrified by the prospect of just that visual. 5. FNAF 5. The 5th FNAF game is probably my favorite game of them all, so this is one that I would love to see brought to life. I think it has one of the best narratives and is one of the games with the best sense of atmosphere, making it perfect for a horror film. It's easier to follow from a narrative sense, but still creepy as all heck. However, as I said previously, I'm not sure if this is where we'll be going, considering most people think the first game is the one we'll be following along more closely with, which, to be honest, fair. However, that being said, I still think the 5th FNAF game would make the best inspiration, especially in regards to the overall feeling of the film. At the very least, I hope the film takes inspiration from us having to navigate vents with animatronics in them. That seems like it would be a great takeaway from FNAF 5 to incorporate into the games. Cramped spaces in general are terrifying, never mind a cramped space where there might be something lurking in the darkness waiting to get you. Number 4. Sister Location. This time around, I just want to talk about the specific location that we know as the sister location, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. I'm really hoping that we at least allude to this location if it doesn't just get fully shown in the film. I really would love for us to have some kind of cliffhanger ending for the movie where this is the location we see at the end and it's actually shown to be deep underneath the restaurant. I know this goes kind of against some of the lore from the games in regards to what we know of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but I really think it could be a cool moment for us to showcase. At some point, I think this is a place that needs to be created for a live action project, so I'm really really hoping we get that sooner rather than later, because we've already waited a really long time. Also, I just really love the idea of Circus Baby as an antagonist, and the idea that she might even appear in the film or somehow be connected to the plot would be really cool to me. However, she is intrinsically tied to the sister location in the games, so we can't really have Circus Baby without either Circus Baby's Pizza World or Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Number 3. Vents. The vents are a place you definitely don't want to end up, nor do you want them to even exist in a FNAF game, really. I mean, they're the place that either animatronics come out of, or that you need to sneak through, or even worse, both of those things at the same time. So I mean, yeah. But at the same time, when it comes to a film where nothing can harm you, because you're just watching the film, you're not even interacting in the same way like you do in a video game, you definitely need the vents to be an integral part of the movie and how characters move around, whether they be animatronics or simply people trying to survive the night. Never mind he's in the walls, my god, he's in the vents, is something we should all be screaming after coming out of this movie. Number 2. The end? One of my personal biggest theories for this movie is that it is going to end on a cliffhanger. I anticipate that this may even be followed by a mid-credits or a post-credits scene, like we now see with so many franchises that people build or are trying to build, primarily with superhero movies, but yeah, this is like become a franchise thing now. I can't imagine that they will leave us with a fully complete story, because I think they'll want to leave it open to potentially continue said story elsewhere at a later time, should the movie do as well as many are anticipating. Of course, it also depends. I mean, you can have a complete story without a cliffhanger ending and still have it roll into a multi-film franchise. Just look at other successful horror film franchises like Scream, Final Destination, and Hellraiser, all of which kind of felt like complete packages but then continued on. Okay, so Final Destination kind of left it open for a sequel, but it still felt like a kind of a complete loop. It could have ended with the first film, but it definitely did not. FNAF could go the same way, but I feel like a more the killer is still out there ending is more likely all in all, just based on what we know from the games and even from the books. Number 1. The big bucks. Personally, I think that this film won't just be a single film. It will be an entire film franchise. How could it not be? FNAF is so popular and is already massive when it comes to the dollars that it rakes in, and the film, or hopefully films, could simply be the next level for the franchise, especially in terms of those dollar bills. It could help the much loved initially indie franchise reach an entire new audience, expanding its fan base. My theory here is not scary necessarily for fans, but is scary in the sense that it could lead to a ton more horror film content, building up the entire FNAF CU, or the FCU, the Five Nights at Freddy's cinematic universe, or just Freddy's cinematic universe if you prefer. I believe that the first FNAF film will set up a whole series of other films which will follow in the franchise, or potentially even spin off into like TV series. Like, there's a lot of stuff we could do here. And personally, I'm here for that. I hope this film sets up others, and I hope it does well at the box office and in terms of the fans and critics' opinions, so that it can continue to build on the lore and the franchise we've all already honestly fallen.
And at 10, Henry. Now, there are many ways to consider Henry a victim of Purple Guy, but he's first on the list because not many of them are like as direct as the others on this list. Like, while we do see Henry killed by Baby in FNAF World, in the main series games he lives on to FNAF 6 where he burns in a fire, supposedly by his own hand. Unless Baby kills him before the fire, since he like cut her off when she was trying to do her whole thing, but that's just speculation. However, Henry was also the victim of Purple Guy's crimes when Charlotte died, as seen in FNAF 2 and FNAF 6, as well as in the books, since Henry lost his daughter Charlie to William when she was only 3 years old. Remember, when someone takes a life, the one who dies isn't the only victim, alright? Their friends, their family, anyone who loved the victim are victims as well. Okay, so this also extends to Henry's wife, who we don't know the name of as far as I know, since she may not even be alive in the games. So she could also definitely be alive in the movie, especially if William and Henry are. So we might even see both. That's a 2-for-1 deal on number 10. You're welcome. And at 9, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Purple Guy had. Being the first victim, Charlotte gets killed outside Fredbear's family diner, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed to be a puppet to protect other kids, but treat her as a priority. Remember the green bracelet thing? However, when it gets trapped in a box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So, in another attempt, the puppet saves her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of a second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. So, in a way, Charlotte really is the one you should not have killed, but just like in like a name sense, not in like a character sense. Since if he had spared her, maybe none of the other animatronics would have been alive and he wouldn't have gotten killed or spring-locked or whatever. And also, if you want to stay up to date on the FNAF movie news, be sure you hit subscribe, because as soon as we actually find out something concrete, and that wouldn't be like a 30-second video, you'll know. And it ain't Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you expected to be number 1 on this list. The generally assumed one you should not have killed, the missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy, at least if you believe Golden Freddy to be an actual animatronic and not a hallucination. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which also is the description of the only human to appear as a picture in the FNAF survival logbook, or security logbook, depending on if you read the crossed out name or not. I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in this book when a theorist going by username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put them into the word search as coordinates, in essence, which has got to be the most complicated name drop in history, okay? Like, we dig through source code, we put like audio files through spectrograms, we put them on reverse and speed them up and trying to find clues, but this was even too much for this series, okay? Like, I don't know why you had to go make things so complicated, but timely pop culture references aside, I don't know if Cassidy's going to be in the movie, given how the screenplay is the Mike screenplay, at least going off what Scott said on Reddit years ago. But in that post, he also said that he scrapped the Cassidy screenplay, so I doubt she'll be a major player, but she could still show up. And it's 7, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of Purple Guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. Yeah, in the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton sets up shop in a new restaurant he owned and operated called Circus Baby's Pizza World, where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder bots hungry for the flesh of children, because, you know, that's what the series has come to. Or at least that's what it had come to, and then it got worse. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star baby, but she didn't listen, because of course she didn't. She's a goddamn kid, and you made the animatronic specifically to attract kids. So, in a moment of ultimate regret, she ends up getting scooped and insta-killed while baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then like crushed her in her storage unit. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. And while he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, okay? And then even victimized himself, since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and the friends and family of the victim are also victims. This then leads him to discover his passion, but then this leads him to discover possession and agony and like the remnant metal thing. So yeah, I don't know how he knows that it was agony that did the possessing, but this then completely changes his motive. So it's a pivotal death in the Purple Guy chronology, so hopefully it'll be in the movie. And it's 6, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learn about in the games. We believe his soul is passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel, though, hasn't really ever gotten much of a description, aside from a brief mention in the books. But that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, it could also be him. So there's not really much validity to it, but I mean, I don't know, he could still show up. I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company, in essence, which is kind of weird. Like, he's not getting paid for it. And with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout all of the games, I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuffed into a Freddy animatronic at the end of the game. But yeah, then I thought that Gregory from Security Breach was going to be a Gabriel comparison, because like, you know, whole hiding in Freddy thing, Gabriel's in Freddy, but then he turned into Crying Child. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe that's who Grant Freely is playing, since it's a supporting character in the movie. Maybe that, I don't know. Halfway through into number 5, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. Well, everyone else's favorite. My favorite's still Toy Chica specifically, because that one's not possessed. I guess in a way though, it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names. It kind of worked out way too perfectly in that sense. The others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too. I don't know, it's freaking weird, man. But not much else is known about Fritz, and that's why I'm saying all this jargon. It's to extend the runtime of the video. There originally was a theory that Fritz was going to be a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors, and then this was also like said to be a joke by Scott, and he also added other mechanics like having phone guy and springtrap connected, referencing the phone guy's purple guy theory and all that. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the FNAF movie, I honestly, my first thought when I saw that kid was that he looked like a Fritz. Okay, his name is Asher, but he looks like Fritz. Orange hair for like the most orange animatronic, it makes sense to me. Okay, tell me, look at this kid and tell me that he doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy, alright? Speaking of which, in it for Jeremy. As I've said in multiple videos, Jeremy is the biggest fucking troll name in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, none of them being connected, and only 2 of them are actually direct victims of William Afton. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, goes on to possess Bonnie. And the other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. The one who was testing the game before Tape Girl, who ends up finding Glitch Trap and then goes insane. And by going insane, I mean like genuinely ends up having a psychotic break. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face, which is interesting given that the Withered Bonnie animatronic as seen in FNAF 2 is also missing its face. Huh. I don't know. It's interesting because Withered Bonnie is the animatronic possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy, and then another Jeremy ended up cutting off his face. Now, I don't think it means anything, or maybe if it was intended or just a coincidence, but knowing the series, I'm worried that the smallest detail can have the biggest consequences. Hopefully, they can explain the recurring name in the movie so that we can all just like take a breather and have that load off of our backs, but I don't know. I can't look at people with the name Jeremy the same way anymore. There's a Jeremy in the office. I can't look him in the eye. Straight up. I can't look anyone in the eye, but that's the social anxiety. Getting close to the end of number 3, Casey. Casey is the main character in a Fazbear Fright story that I don't think we've talked about much in detail. I might have mentioned the story here and there, but I don't think there's ever been like a whole number on it, except for like one time where I've talked about roughly the same concept. Casey appears in the Fazbear Fright story Dance With Me from Step Closer, the 4th Fazbear Frights book. She ends up stealing some glasses that when worn either reveal or display a Ballora animatronic dancing. Honestly, this is the first character that I put on the list, and the reason that I really wanted this list to happen, since the entire story revolves around how she was almost a victim of Ballora. Now, don't get me wrong, the story is very unclear in this regard, but it's generally assumed that the ending does imply that the little girl who gets the glasses back got snatched by Ballora, who spent the entire story slowly getting closer to Casey every time she put on the glasses. She returns the glasses to the woman who owned them, and then when her daughter puts them on, she starts dancing. And knowing the series, I highly doubt that it's because she's excited to see a 7-foot-tall Ballora animatronic dancing right in front of her. Casey was very nearly caught by Ballora, instead having a little girl take her place, so yeah, I hope that she shows up in the FNAF movie because, first of all, Afton absolutely built those glasses because we all know how he felt about Ballora. So, it's still a victim of Purple Guy, still a William Afton victim, so calm your tits in the comments. But, I don't know, I want this explained because, yeah, I've been confused about it. But ultimately, in at number 2, Susie. Susie was the first to die in the missing children's incident, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kind of liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because, like, you get killed out of nowhere, and that sucks bad, but also liberating because while yes, you're dead, you're also dead. And you don't really have to worry about anything else, okay? I suppose not in this case, since they go on to possess the animatronics, but like, they don't have to worry about anything in their future, right? Just getting revenge, that's their only purpose. And honestly, that kind of sounds like the life. Not having to pay rent, and just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer, that's like my kind of vacation. But I digress. Being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know that she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night. Keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones after being decommissioned when the restaurant closes prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and the first games in the it's a whole lot. But the Withered animatronics are the ones we see in FNAF 1. And considering how the chairs and like the clapper boards seen in the BTS photos say Bad Cupcake, Susie is a very likely appearance in the movie, possibly even a focal point. So yeah, maybe this is a love story between Mike and Toy Chica, so I can vicariously live through him. And finally, in at number 1, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be a bit controversial. There's going to be people mad at me in the comments, but there's no way that I could have done this list without mentioning one of the greatest debates of my DMs ever. The amount of people who message me on Instagram on a regular basis about the bite of 83 and how it wasn't William's fault bothers me to my core. They also keep saying that it's the bite of 87. It's not.
okay? They're two different things. I say this every time I bring it up though, the bite of 83 is not a spring lock failure. It could not have been. The reason I know it wasn't a spring lock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning no spring locks could have had a chance of failing, since a spring lock failure refers to when the mechanisms are being forced to stay open, and then the failure is when they close on you when you're inside the suit, okay? Plus, there's no spring lock mechanisms in the jaw, and it wouldn't need it anyway, because like the jaw just moves up and down. I don't know what else to say. It would have had to be super powered in order to actually crush a skull, something that only William would be able to integrate, considering how he made the robots and is the suit technician. Alright, it's fairly cut and dry at this point. I don't know why people are still yelling at me in my DMs, but it's happening. I don't know, it could have been that he planned on using the Fredbear suit first as like his murder suit, and then his son got killed in it, and then he was like, yeah, maybe not, but who knows. In at 10, Freddy Fazbear's. While we might have already had a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the delivery service that Virtual Dining Concepts was working on with Scott Cawthon, that was seemingly cancelled or postponed for the time being at least, possibly due to the movie. However, to make up for it, we did get set photos of the Freddy's location for the FNAF movie, or at least one of the Freddy's locations, since there could be more than one. But the one that we've had shots of right now is abandoned in the context of the movie. We originally got pictures of the facade being built, and then we got to see the actual sign, and finally the finished set. Apparently people online were upset with the sign, which I can kind of understand, but also don't find fair. Like, yes, FNAF is a huge series that could have had a more elaborate sign. This is basically what the Chuck E. Cheese signs look like, so obviously that's gonna be what they lean towards. Come on guys, okay? It's every fake Freddy's that anyone's ever made for a thumbnail, because it's basically just Chuck E. Cheese. It's also since been taken down since they finished filming with that location. In at 9, Bad Cupcake. The current working title, or as some say the production title of this film, is Bad Cupcake, which is clearly meant to be a reference to Carl the Cupcake, Chica's faithful consumable companion. I say consumable because, well, Carl is a cupcake and I'm the faithful companion that isn't a food product. Well, unless you buy me dinner first. The title of the movie isn't actually Bad Cupcake, that's just the title they use as a way to protect the movie, so casting calls, booking locations, and all of that is done using the Bad Cupcake moniker. But considering it's the working title, I guess there isn't really going to be much significance with the plot. I don't think that Chica will be a key player in this, despite Susie seemingly already being cast, but it's probably just going to be like for a plot development thing, because she's been cast as Ghost Kid number 5. That's just like a way to push the story forward and probably pay homage to a character that unfortunately won't be making an appearance, because I doubt that Carl the Cupcake is gonna have like a big twist reveal. And also, if you guys are excited for the FNAF movie, be sure you hit subscribe, because we're gonna be talking about it whenever there are 10 things that we can then cover on a list. And at 8, cast. While a whole lot of the cast has been revealed so far, most notably of course being Matthew Lillard as William Afton and Josh Hutcherson as Mike Schmidt, there are at least, well at the time of typing this, 13 total cast members officially on the IMDb, and a 14th that had the film on their resume already. That secret cast member seems to be Jessica Blackmore, who you may know from My Name is Vivian or Monsters of Man. Ironically, played a TV reporter on 5 Days of Memorial, which I find hilarious, because it's 5 Days of Memorial, and then now their resume has them listed as Mike's mom. You know, 5 days at Memorial, 5 nights at Freddy's, it's kind of they happened at the same time. The rest of the cast is Elizabeth Lale, Mary Stuart Masterson, Kat Connor Sterling, Josephine Love, Grant Feely, Piper Rubio, Asher Colton Spence, Lucas Grant, Joseph Polquin, Christian Stokes, and David Houston Dottie as of writing the video. I think a couple more have since been revealed, and apparently Mike P. Sullivan is in the movie as well according to his Facebook page. And at 7, Fountain Fight. Leaked set footage, or possibly just set footage depending on your definition of leaked, shows a scene where Mike is punching someone in a fountain, or at least he was punching the water in the fountain, since the camera angle kind of made the second actor unnecessary. Plus, why would you hold someone underwater to punch them if you don't need to? But nevertheless, we know that there is a fight in a fountain in what is most likely a mall. This probably takes place closer to the beginning of the movie and could be the catalyst for Mike needing to find a new job, which would bring him to Freddy Fazbear's, but that's currently speculation. It's also been reported that apparently the scene is caused by someone tackling Mike into the fountain, or the other way around, with Mike tackling someone into the fountain, while a child also screams for their dad at the same time, which is probably the one that Mike is beating to a pulp. My guess would be that this kid and father were arguing, or that the child wasn't listening, and Mike, due to his previous trauma from the bite of 83, saw this as an attempted kidnapping, which made him spring into action. I'm assuming that this is after 1983, since I don't even think that a mall mall would hire a teenager as a security guard, and at this point Michael would also have no reason to have this intense of a reaction until after the bite of 83. And at 6, FNAF World reference. In this mall, there were also photos of an ice cream shop, which some people thought was Mike's job before security. However, I think security guard to night guard at Freddy's makes more sense than ice cream shop to security guard to night guard. You know, this isn't like Ant-Man after all. Mike isn't going to be working at Ben & Jerry's and then don a springlock suit to become a superhero. But the name of the ice cream shop is creatively Ice Cream Parties. Because, you know, I'm surprised it's not Ice Cream Parlor. And while it could have been a Chica themed joint, it's not, because, you know, copyright within the universe. It's also not in the style of any stores from the Pizzaplex, so it's not going to be taking place there. But it does feature Chica's Magic Rainbow from FNAF World as its mascot. It's not really anything deeper than that, it's just a reference to FNAF World, which honestly I love, okay? Like, out of all the things to reference, FNAF World is probably one of the most interesting things that they could have, since after all, the clues from FNAF 3 on how to get the good ending are put in place because of FNAF World. So it's already a meta game within the FNAF universe, and now it's being referenced in the movie. So maybe this is a bigger detail than we could even consider right now. Yeah, time for the FNAF cinematic universe. Can't wait for the Avengers, which is just Ultimate Custom Night. Halfway through into number 5, Ghost Kids. As I mentioned earlier, the Ghost Kids have been cast for the FNAF movie, or at least it appears as if the 5 Ghost Kids have been cast, but only 2 have been made official. Josephine Love is listed as Ghost Kid number 5, and David Houston Doughty is listed as Ghost Kid number 3, which implies that there are still number 1, 2, and 4. There are still a couple of unknowns at the moment as well, characters that don't have a name, or actors that don't have a character name. Grant Feely still hasn't had a character name been officially added, and there are also a couple of characters with names that we're not familiar with. Garrett, Abby, and Max. These are all characters who don't really have in-game equivalents, and currently it's suspected that Garrett is Crying Child, Abby could be Elizabeth, and the newly cast Hank could be Henry Emily, meaning that Abby could instead be Charlie. But there's a lot that we are unclear about, but as it pertains to the Ghost Kids, number 5 seems to be Susie, and then Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy, and Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy could be played by Grant Feely, Asher Colton Spence, and David Houston Doughty. That leaves room for Cassidy. That could also be Abby or Kat Connor Sterling, whose character name is rumored to be Max, but considering the fact that it is rumored, I'm guessing that it could be that it's just a Cassidy that's older than we expected. And at 4, Vanessa. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Yeah, interestingly, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list despite the Vanessa we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which takes place after 2023 at least, it can't be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film, who, ironically enough, is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because there is a theory that Vanessa, or Vanny, was an adult Elizabeth robot, and that the ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But damn, okay, if that's not ironic, I don't know what is. Also, fun fact, I know Elizabeth Lail from playing Frozen's Anna in Once Upon a Time on ABC. Yeah, Anna to psychopathic serial killer bunny. What an arc. Getting close to the end, into number 3, sequels. Thanks to an interview with Matthew Lillard, who plays William Afton in the movie, we know that he signed a 3-picture deal with Blumhouse in regards to the Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So it's very possible that we get upwards of 2 sequels at least, which also makes sense if you look at it in other ways too. From a film production and marketing standpoint, trilogies have been a staple of various franchises for decades. The Star Wars movies came out in trilogies, Divergent, the Marvel heroes all get their own trilogies, not including team-ups, Christopher Nolan's Batman, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the list goes on. So, a trilogy of FNAF movies wouldn't be out of the ordinary, especially if the first one does well. I mean, if Sonic can get a sequel, I'm sure that FNAF will. And there's also the point that from what I've been seeing, it's possible that this movie is going to be including the first 3 games in the series, which would make sense if we're trying to base the trilogy off the 9 full games that have been released thus far. And considering how there's been a leak of someone who took a tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop and saw Springtrap heads, I think that this has more weight to it. And the FNAF novels, which I'm sure also had an influence over the story of the films, are also a trilogy. So honestly, I think that this will do well enough that they're definitely going to get a trilogy out of it And you know what, Jason Blum may even find the film so fun that he'd let another 2 happen even if they didn't do great, but I feel like they're gonna make a profit. But ultimately, in number 2, movie date. The movie is about the first 3 games thing also makes sense when looking at the date the film is set in. While there have been no official announcements, I mean, we know that the big moments establishing the plot of the games take place in the 80s. The Crying Child, Elizabeth, and Charlotte all biting it in 1983. In Crying Child's case, though, quite literally. And then the missing children's incident takes place in 1985, and we can't forget that infamous bite of 87. FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, FNAF 2 in 87, and FNAF 3 would take place this year, 2023, since the description says 30 years after Freddy's closes, which would have to be the FNAF 1 location in 1993. So they already have 2023 cars, okay? However, there was a casting call of sorts on Central Casting that asked for cars from the late 70s to 90s, which makes sense for the time frame of the first 2 games, as well as the other important establishing moments. Cause I don't know about you, but having Crying Child being rushed to the hospital in a 2019 Toyota Corolla kinda be weird in my eyes. If only they had asked for a 67 Impala. That's a reference that no one's gonna get on this channel. And finally, in number 1, missing children's incident. The missing children's incident is the inciting moment for the whole series. Without the missing children's incident, we never have gotten the first game, which means that we're expecting to see something similar in the movie, albeit a little more tame, I'm sure, since it's probably going to be rated PG-13. But we know that there's going to be a 1980s crime scene thanks to a casting call found on Central Casting, searching for both adults and children for this scene. And I mean, out of everything we know in the series, it's most likely an MCI scene rather than a Bite of 87 or Crying Child death scene, since I don't really think that those would be classified as crimes or crime scenes. I don't know. And thanks to the Fazbear Frights books, we know that the missing children's incident takes place in 1985. So yeah, that's probably what this is going to be, and I hope that Oscar pops out of a ball pit real quick. And 10, the Bite of 87. I'm gonna be straight with you. We still don't know who caused the Bite of 87, or in reality, who the Bite of 87 was actually on. Like, we have theories, like we have a theory that it was Mangle, that it was Freddy, or that it was Chica, and that they bit Jeremy, but the theories don't equal fact. This incident has been on our minds since the first game, and we haven't been able to come up with a definitive, confirmed answer yet. So, if you ask me, that's certainly something that I'd like explored in the movie. It's been like 9 years at this point, and we still haven't gotten a direct answer, and if anything, we've gotten conflicting answers. We thought that it was Mangle, but then the handprint on Freddy's face seemed to indicate that it was him, and then Ultimate Custom Night made us think that it was Toy Chica because she said, "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead. It makes it seem like it was her. We have no real answer, despite what you're going to tell me in the comments, because I know that it's happening. I know that you're all angrily commenting about how it's confirmed and it's canon, but it's really not, okay? Unless Scott clearly says Mangle caused the bite, all we have is theories, which means that it's still a mystery, it's still a question that I want solved in the freaking movie.
Number 9, why Ballora? This isn't really a super specific question, obviously, but that is simply because when it comes to Ballora, there's actually so much we really need answered. Chiefly, why? Why does she exist? Why does she sing such sad songs? What does that mean? Why did Afton make her? Why does she both seemingly want to help us and hurt us in Sister Location? I'm not sure if Ballora will appear in the first FNAF film, but I do think regardless, the film's existence provides us with an opportunity to at least attempt to answer these questions. How? Why? Through just simply allowing us to better understand William and his motivation for making the animatronics. While I don't know if the more humanoid ones will appear, we at least might get to see William start to get interested in that prospect. And perhaps there are real-world people he'll interact with that will inspire Ballora's creation.
And at 8, the Stitch Wraith. The Stitch Wraith was a character introduced in the Fazbear Frights book epilogues, with each installment of the series giving you another chapter of its story. However, we have still yet to see why that character was introduced, and if it's going to be included in anything in the future. It's possible that this was like another planned antagonist, possibly for like the Security Breach DLC. However, these books started releasing before Scott also announced his retirement. The Stitch Wraith is a mysterious figure wearing Phineas's black trench coat, and it wears a white mask, which is later revealed to be the head of the Simon doll. The mask's features are drawn on with thick black marker. It has 2 eyes, one of which is just blackened out, and it was originally intended to resemble like the black eye on Simon. It has like a toothy grin with missing teeth. It has it looks like blood around the mouth, but it's apparently supposed to be pizza sauce. The rest of its body is an endoskeleton of unknown origin. It has Fetch's battery in its chest, and then it glows red, but like also nothing else ever comes from this character. So, I don't know. Like, what do you think? Will the Stitch Wraith appear on screen instead of on the pages anytime soon? Are we gonna like see a little hint to the character in the movie?
Number 7. What does Michael know about his dad? Based on the fact that Michael's mom is supposed to be in this movie, it makes me think that he probably doesn't know that much. At least in this version of the story. If his mom is present, this might mean that she actually hasn't told Michael the truth about his father, and is keeping the secret from him because of some terrible things that she knows about William. Or it could mean that Michael in the story is adopted and doesn't actually know the truth about his biological parents. Likely William and maybe, I don't know, Clara? I'm interested to see perhaps if part of the reason he takes a job at Freddy's is because he actually wants to get close to William, who he actually suspects he might be related to. That could actually be a good solid narrative reason for him to be snooping around, and could give him a strong motivation to stay at the job, despite the strange nightly goings on at the restaurant. I mean, we do need a reason for him to like keep coming back, right? And what he knows, or doesn't know, of his biological father could be the key to helping this other largely unanswered plot point make sense.
And it's 6 possession rules. Possession in the FNAF universe is very interesting. However, it's not something that we fully understand yet. There are a couple of things that we know, like how agony is one of the most powerful emotions that stretches out further from the body than anything else. But we don't really know if agony, grabbing hold of something, and what we call possession are the same thing. We don't know if, like, when you die, your remaining agony is what does it, or if it's supposed to be your spirit. We don't know if any of the actual rules, if there are any, regarding possession. We don't know if you need to be close to the thing that you're possessing, assuming that possession and agony are different, since if it is agony, you would need to be around the thing. We know very little about this whole thing, and it's probably going to stay that way. I mean, if we knew about the rules, it would mean that the series would also then be confined to those rules, but by never establishing them, the game can do whatever they want and we can't really question it, since they never said it couldn't happen. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that the laws of possession within the FNAF universe kind of get established more, so that we can use that to figure more shit out.
Number 5. How does William Afton feel about being a father? Honestly, there's so many questions that are unanswered that I need answers to about like just William Afton alone. This man is an enigma to me, even after all of these years. Something that has always super confused me when it comes to William is what his intention with his own kids is. I mean, how does he feel about them? Does he love them? Has he only ever tried to protect them, but, you know, everything maybe just went awry? Or does he somehow blame them for something and so has actually intentionally kind of set out to torment them? This is what I need to know. We have had no real answers regarding this. There have been indicators that in some ways William has, you know, tried to protect his kids, but then in other ways he's kind of done like just the opposite of that. So really, there is evidence for both him cherishing them, but also resenting them possibly. Is it possible he feels both, or that he perhaps suffers from some kind of emotional mental split? Maybe some dissociative identity disorder plays into this that we just don't know about yet? Whatever the answer, I feel like having this question answered in general will also help us to understand other aspects of William's personality and motivation as a character, and as a major antagonist in the story.
And for FNAF 3 ending. Which FNAF 3 ending is canon still actually isn't solidified. Most people assume for it to be the good ending, since it takes more work and we set the souls of the original 5 missing children free, but in reality, we don't know which ending really happened in the main timeline. When asked about it in an interview with Daco, Scott Cawthon said that he wasn't going to answer that, since he knows how the community gets with things, and cited the arguments over Mangle's gender as a reason why he wouldn't answer. But in my mind, that would just be more of a reason to answer it, since we wouldn't end up fighting over which ending is correct. But that's a theory for another day. There was also the common 2-eye theory that aimed to explain that there were 2 souls inside Golden Freddy, since Golden Freddy had 2 eyes lit in the bad ending. However, that is also not true, since the character of Crying Child hadn't been introduced yet, and this was the planned final game of the series. So why would an animatronic suddenly have 2 souls inside it? and the light in the other eye is just because that's how light works. It's simple physics. So basically everything about the FNAF 3 ending is still a mystery, but if the comments I've seen about the movie being the first 3 games are true, I really hope they explain this fully.
Number 3, why does Michael return each night? I touched on one possible reason for this motivation for Josh Hutcherson's character, but there could be a slew of other options when it comes to the answer to this question. Could be as simple as, a simple paycheck that Michael desperately needs, or the motivation could come in the form of a mystery that Michael simply needs to know the answer to. He could be an aspiring young video journalist looking to get the big scoop on what's really happening at Freddy's after the word got out the children had gone missing. I mean, any of these things could be possible. There are many reasons he could be there, but the fact remains that the games and books have never really given us a clear, definitive reason for this plot point in the story. All we know is we play as Mike, who maybe is using a pseudonym, since we now know thanks to game lore that he is William's son. However, as I said earlier, this might be less intentional on Mike's part. He may not know at this point that he is an Afton and simply be using the name that, he grew up knowing is his, as his actual legal name. I'm still personally a fan of the theory that Michael Afton was once in William's care and for one reason or another escaped or was actually taken away from him, and could even somehow be Crying Child. Like, Crying Child is basically Mike's past self who didn't die but actually got like a brain injury and simply forgot his dad and the time spent with him or something like that.
And ultimately, and at number 2, shadow animatronics. One of the oldest theories is that the shadow animatronics are the first of the Springlock victims. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guy dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple Springlock suits failing at once, since the term Springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole and the individual Springlock mechanisms that are present within the suits. So, the line of multiple and simultaneous could mean multiple of these Springlocks inside the suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in these Springlock suits, which is where the shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are from Freddy and Bonnie, the 2 animatronics that have Springlock versions, but there are still holes in the theory. And while there is always the ability for the characters to be explored and explained in the movie, which I feel like is possible because they're pretty damn freaky characters.
Number 1. Why does William Afton kill? I mean, this one has been plaguing us literally forever. We still have no idea what the motivation behind Afton's kills are. And here's hoping that when Matthew Lillard takes on this role, this will be one of the prominent questions in the front of his mind that he'll want answers to and likely want to give us answers to as well. After all, it's kind of hard to connect with the character as an actor when you can't understand the character's motivations. I'm hoping this will be built right into the script, of course, but if it isn't somehow, then I'm hoping we at the very least get an inclination from Lillard as to why William Afton does what he does. After all, it doesn't have to be verbally communicated or even have like a whole scene about it, but there could be at the very least little hints throughout the film that help us to understand the answer to that question. I don't think that's asking too much. In fact, I don't even think asking for a blatant in-script answer at this point is too much. It's been way too long.
And at 10, Henry Emily. Oh, come on, okay? Like, yeah, we want to see Henry in the movie, but it's also kind of required, in my opinion. He's like a main stake. And come on, William, did you really think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he was already suspecting something, okay? He took extra care to protect her, and then she still died. That's gonna be a vengeful father if I have ever heard of one, okay? And at that point, he added protection onto her, and that was vengeful. And he didn't even need vengeance yet. So then, he's after you because you killed his daughter. So why didn't you kill him next? Alright? I don't know. Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you, but as long as they can't find a body, you'll be clear again. And they won't put you away for the 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well. Okay, without a body, there's no forensic evidence. So yeah, just finally off Henry, and you'd be able to stay yourself, or even just this Springtrap. Which, if you were Springlock when you killed him, it would be a whole other thing, because it's not like they're gonna put a robot Springlock suit on trial. And I want him to be in the movie specifically so that it can be explained why he didn't kill Henry, basically. And in the 9, Springtrap. Speaking of Springtrap, I saw multiple tweets saying that the FNAF movie was going to be about the first 3 games in the series, which didn't really seem logical to me, because like why would you try and cram 3 games of story and nearly 40 years of lore into one movie? We all know that too many villains usually does not go over well, Spider-Man 3. And while Fazbear's Fright might have actually opened in 2023, which makes the timing perfect for that, we weren't really sure if it was true, until an Instagram user in a now deleted post shared photos of their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which is the company making the animatronics for the movies, which the post included multiple Springtrap hens, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering all the other information, it basically confirms Springtrap to be in the movie, which I think we were all expecting, but it's still nice to know. Probably towards the end if they're doing it linearly, but they could be jumping around a bit depending on how they want to present the plot, and if Oscar's involved with a time-traveling ball pit. And at 8, Vanny. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Weirdly enough, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list, despite the Vanessa that we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. That's what I was talking about in the intro when I said characters being cast that couldn't even be born yet. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which most likely takes place post 2023, yeah, it couldn't really be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film who ironically enough is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because you know there's the theory that Vanessa or Vanny is an adult Elizabeth robot and that the Ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But if that theory is true, then we could technically be seeing Vanny in the FNAF movie even if she hasn't become Vanny yet. Vanessa also being a robot Elizabeth adult would kind of explain how Glitchtrap infected her rather than just driving her nuts like it did to Jeremy before. And at 7, Monty. Okay, now originally we thought that this movie was going to be the first game, like the first movie. But then, like I said, I saw tweets saying that it was going to be the first 3. But then, after we got the tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop with the photos of Springtrap's head, it kind of became clear that Springtrap's going to be in the movie. However, it's also worth noting that there is another head in the background of the last image of that post's collage that seems to be extremely similar to Monty after he's been broken in Security Breach. But considering how, again, Security Breach takes place decades after FNAF 3. It's unlikely that he'll appear in this movie, but maybe in the 3rd one that they have planned, considering how Matthew Lillard signed a contract for 3 films. So, I don't know, maybe they're already working on the other props. This could also just simply be a remaining thing from another project, because Jim Henson's has worked with like reptile exhibits and stuff in zoos, so could just be that. And at 6, Foxy. Fritz is one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. I guess in a way it was kind of meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names of their groups. And the others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too, and like, come on, that's freaking weird, man. But after that, not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz and Foxy were a good guy who actually wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Custom Night after an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors instead of just kill you. It was proven to be a joke feature since the other mechanics that were changed in this update had Phone Guy and Springtrap being connected, referencing the Phone Guy's Purple Guy theory, and Dream theory, which again we now know is not true. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the movie, I think that kid looks like a Fritz. Alright? Orange hair for the most orange of the animatronics, it makes sense to me. Okay? Tell me that kid doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy. Just saying. Halfway through at number 5, Golden Freddy. Since the beginning of FNAF, the dawn of time, it seems, we have been wondering about the mysterious and seemingly supernatural entity of Golden Freddy. This entity that's able to travel through solid doors and walls, who causes us to have hallucinations, and crashes our game when they kill us. Who was this mysterious being? Over the years we've gotten a few names, most notably with the gravestone ending in FNAF 6, but even with that ending, Golden Freddy's name had always eluded us. And if they are the one you should not have killed, or even if they aren't, the name wasn't given to us in Ultimate Ultimate Custom Night either, only an alias. But alas, we were finally saved in this one thing. Everything else got messed up, but we were finally saved when the survival logbook came out, where after jumping through more hoops than poodles at a dog show or dolphins at SeaWorld when they just want food, we uncovered the name of Cassidy, thanks to wrong numbers on various pages somehow becoming coordinates in the goddamn word search. It was a lot for a name reveal that honestly didn't really mean much to the series, since the name Cassidy only appears in one other place, and that was the novel, The Fourth Closet, and the character is of little consequence otherwise. And considering how Scott scrapped a Cassidy screenplay, I doubt they're gonna have much significance in the movie, but I still want to see Golden Freddy. It's an iconic thing. In it for Vlad. Now, I know at least the vast majority of comments seem to think that the Immortal and the Restless series is like a linchpin in FNAF that proves that Afton killed his wife and what her name is supposed to be, but that's still highly unlikely. The Immortal and the Restless has never popped up again after Sister Location, and if it was important, it would've. There has never been another instance of that show having any significance other than just being something we turned on to watch after work in Sister Location. It didn't reveal the mother's name, it didn't reveal that Afton never wanted a son, because if that was the case, he would never have wanted Crying Child, so why would he have sworn to put him back together? And if he didn't want Michael, why would he have sent him down to get Elizabeth? It just doesn't make sense, okay? The Immortal and the Restless is something that shows up less often in the series than the name Jeremy, and we don't think that that name has any additional significance. Plus, I don't know about you, but I watch The Flash, and I can't run at super speed, so yeah, it doesn't reflect your personal life. So basically, I want the show to appear on a TV in one scene so that we can see Vlad, and I don't know, maybe have like someone at a Comic-Con sign like the voice actor for Vlad at a Comic-Con. That'd be funny. I want to see that. That's the version. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Mangle. I'm gonna be straight with you. You're gonna be mad, but I'm gonna say it. We don't know who caused the bite of 87 still, or in reality, who the bite of 87 was actually on. I mean, we have theories about it. We have the theory that it was Mangle, or that it was Freddy, or maybe Chica that bit Jeremy, but theories do not equal fact. This incident has been on our minds since the first game, and we haven't been able to come up with a definitive and confirmed answer. So yeah, I want this to happen. If you ask me, that's almost certainly something that needs to be explained. It's been 8 years, and we still haven't gotten an actual direct answer. And if anything, we've gotten conflicting answers. Originally, we thought it was Mangle, but then the handprint on Freddy's face seemed to kind of indicate that it was him. And then in Ultimate Custom Night, we got the line of "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead, of course, which made us think that it could have been Toy Chica, but we have no real answer, despite what I know you've already written in the comments. Yeah, I know that you're all angry, okay? You're all typing out and yelling at me, but come on, okay? It's not confirmed and it's not canon. Unless Scott clearly says that Mangle caused the bite, all we have is theories. So, I'm desperately hoping that Mangle shows up in the movie so that we can have it explained. Please! For the love of God, especially if it's going to have the first 3 games and FNAF 2 has Mangle in it, so just do it, please. And ultimately, in at number 2, Circus Baby. Hello and welcome to Miss Mojo. Today we're counting down the top 10 worst anime betrayals, but it's FNAF. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single goddamn time. Maybe next time I'll say top 10 anime. In Sister Location, we thought that we finally had the first actually decent animatronic, someone that was trying to help us, like a prototype glam rock Freddy. But that wasn't true, alright? Baby was giving us tips on how to survive, she was helping us get through Bellora's gallery, she really seemed like she wanted us to live. But then, what do we get for trusting her? Scooped and stuffed, like we were just the family pet turkey around Thanksgiving. It was probably one of the most brutal things to happen to a character in the entire series, and it's all because we trusted Baby. She made us feel safe, she gave us confidence, prevented us from getting killed, only to use our body as a skin suit, then get kicked out of Entered not even a game later. God, almost as bad as my ex. This is why I don't trust Glamrock Freddy though, alright? Baby is legit one of the reasons that I have trust issues, and that's saying something. And finally, in at number 1, the Puppet. The Puppet is an animatronic puppet and a major antagonist, but also a good guy in a way in the FNAF series. They first appeared as the seemingly kind of like implied main antagonist of FNAF 2, but in the later games, they were showing the heroic side. It was like a Regina from Once Upon a Time arc. It serves as the prize vendor of the newly refurbished Freddy Fazbear's of 1987, and it's actually implied that they were originally from Fredbear's Family Diner, or at least its inspiration was. After the pizzeria was only open for a few short weeks, it was forced to close down, but the puppet, unlike the other toy animatronics who were scrapped due to possible malfunctions, was not scrapped, later appearing in the newer pizzeria from the first game, as evident by the dream cutscenes from Sister Location, and appearing as Lefty in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Lefty was an animatronic that was intended to capture the puppet, and it's actually an acronym because it was possessed by Charlotte, and Henry, who was her father, wanted to capture the soul so that he could then release her. But overall, the puppet has significance to the story, and plus, have you seen the way that it walks around in FNAF 2 VR before it jump scares you? That creepy as hell. That needs to be in the movie. In a 10 Markiplier cameo. Yep, you heard me right. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and implied quite heavily that he will be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know. There was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There was a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which was his way of saying that he's at least making a cameo, because why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have free time for this? You know, like if he wasn't in the movie, he wouldn't have had any schedule conflicts because there wouldn't be anything to conflict with. You know what I'm saying? And given a number later on this list, it's entirely possible that there are even more cameos than we were expecting. More on that later, guess you're gonna have to stick around. And at 9, young Vanessa. Now, last time I mentioned that one of the interesting things about the casting choices is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Yeah, interestingly enough, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list despite the Vanessa we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s, and considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which takes place post-2023 at least, it shouldn't be the same Vanessa in this movie unless it's like a robot situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film. But now, it seems that there has been a casting call for a young Vanessa as well, meaning that the idea that this is a robot Elizabeth, but like the adult version, is less likely. However, it's entirely possible that the young Vanessa is just a younger version of one of the robots, like, again, a fourth closet situation where there's multiple. So, we won't really know until the movie comes out. And also, if you're excited for the FNAF movie, be sure you hit subscribe, because we're going to be covering it as much as we can, alright? Maybe we'll even do some one-off videos here and there, saying like, hey, here's something that happened. And at 8, Victoria Patnod. While there haven't been really many major reveals since the last video, there have been quite a few casting announcements. One of these is Victoria Patnod, I hope I'm saying that right, as currently a unnamed social worker, and this seems like a likely stand-in for a social worker who's assigned to Michael after Crying Child dies, as basically the therapist who tries to help him forgive himself and move on with his life. Or that was just like their way of like avoiding sending him to jail for manslaughter. This could be the case, and honestly I think that it is the most likely scenario, but I think that she could have more significance than that as well. I mean, like, if this is meant to be the first 3 games in the movie, Michael is going to need a reason to start working against his father, and a social worker that his father was paying for in an effort to keep him from the truth that Mike then revisits after he snaps for the first time in a decade with the fountain fight. Then that social worker revealing everything about his father could be quite the compelling narrative. And at 7, Dr. Lillian. Speaking of Crying Child, he's most definitely going to get bit in this movie. Like, come on, I mean that moment, the bite of 83 is the catalyst for a whole load of the series. Without the chomping, Mike wouldn't have had a reason to go against his father, and we never would have gotten the games. And since this movie is taking place in the 80s, I'm guessing that Crying Child is going to die either early on or in flashbacks, or dare I say, FNAF-shbacks. Eh? Sorry, I've been gone for a while. So when Tazaday Young was listed as Dr. Lillian on the movie's IMDb, it's actually very possibly the doctor that looks after Crying Child after he gets chopped. Originally, I thought Dr. Lillian would be the therapist that Mike was seeing, but after the social worker reveal, I think it definitely makes more sense that the Lillian is the medical doctor. Also, fun fact, Tadase Young was in an episode of The Winchesters, meaning that the FNAF movie is in the supernatural multiverse, and by extension, the Arrowverse, thanks to that one Legends of Tomorrow episode. You're welcome. In at 6, Bailey Winston. Now, there is very little information about this one, but according to their Actors Access resume, Bailey Winston has been cast in the FNAF movie as Kim. We don't know who the character is, we don't know if this is a fake name or if the character is like the equivalent to a character from the games, but it could be that the character was created for the purposes of the movie, since there are more characters needed for a movie than in a game where the story is contained to only the aspects that we need to see, and everyone else, aside from us basically, are animatronics. So these could be entirely new characters that are being introduced into this series that could have no equivalent in the games, or it could be that they are meant to be characters from the games but with new names to show us that these aren't the same worlds, as a way to keep the mystery of the games alive and not solved by the movie so that they can continue to release the games and do well. Corporate America. Halfway through into number 5, Afton family. It also appears as if the entire Afton family has been cast in the movie, or at least is planned on being cast. Matthew Lillard as William, Josh Hutcherson as Mike, Lucas Grant as Crying Child, whose character is currently named Garrett, Mary Stuart Masterson as a female villain who could be the mother, but Elizabeth is where it gets kinda complicated. While with the mother and Crying Child we can be a little loose with their names, since we never really knew them, we know Elizabeth's name. So while some people think that Piper Rubio as Abby could be Elizabeth, that doesn't seem all too likely. I mean, like, we have names of half the Aftons as their in-game versions, so why would we change the daughter that a whole load of people are fans of? That seems like it would cause some issues. It could also be possible that the younger Vanessa that is meant to be cast is going to be Elizabeth, which would mean that the entire family hasn't been cast yet, but it's possible. Abby could also be meant to be the movie version of Charlie, Henry's daughter. So, since these characters are using names that we haven't seen before, it's difficult to know who could be involved, which I think is basically the point, since if pictures leak of, let's say, the characters Carl and Garrett doing scenes, we don't know if that's because Garrett isn't meant to be Crying Child, or if Carl is someone else entirely. So it's a good way to protect the story while also giving fans something to chew on and talk about to death, like us. In it for YouTubers. While Markiplier seems to be implying that he'll be making an appearance in the FNAF movie, there are some other YouTubers who flat out said that they were invited to the set to check out the filming. The 4 that we know of course, being Dawko, as well as 8-Bit Ryan, Razbowski, and Bazamalam, aka the Theory Thursday crew. From the looks of things, they're just going to vlog on the set and filmed content for their respective channels. However, there could be something more here like cameos or consultation that they haven't revealed for obvious reasons. Although consultation would be like far less of a major thing, and considering how Scott is on set, we don't really need someone else there to consult them, but it could be like a consulting them from like a fan's perspective kind of thing, and how we as outsiders see the series without knowing the full story like Scott does, so who knows. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Freddy Fazbear First Look. We did actually get a set photo of what is presumably the Freddy animatronic made by Jim Henson's Creature Shop around the time of the last part as well. There was only the one photo, and it was very far away, so the quality was abysmal, but if I'm honest, it actually gave me hope for the movie, and more than I had originally. I thought the animatronics for the movie would be CGI, or closer to like the Iron Man suits in the MCU, where only part of the character is practical, and then they fill in the rest with CGI, or that it would be an animatronic suit, but with a dude wearing a green morph suit on the inside being the endoskeleton. But seeing the animatronic without green and actually looking like what I pictured a real Freddy to look like is absolutely insane and incredibly encouraging. Blumhouse was put on the map with Paranormal Activity, and that was with a minimal budget, but with everything they can do now, they're not holding back with this movie, and it brings me joy, okay? I'm really hoping that this movie is good. good. Penultimately, in at number 2, Michael Whalen. Michael Whalen is now listed on the IMDb page for the FNAF movie as the composer and conductor. Whalen is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning composer known for films like Dallas Buyers Club, What's Eating Dad, Veronica Decides to Die, and interestingly, the Pokemon Puzzle League video game from 2000 and the Oprah Winfrey Show for 1 episode. So yeah, if they got an Emmy Award-winning composer on this project, you know that the sound design and atmosphere is going to be excellent. I am preparing for this movie to be terrifying, despite hating horror myself, but mostly I hate horror because jump scares are just too much sensory overload at once, and it messes with my brain to such a degree that it actually makes me angry. Yeah, come on guys, being scared is not a good thing, people. But also I say that, and I say that I hate being scared, yet I was hit by a car a few days ago and only went to the hospital because I thought that the bike I was on was broken. That's why I have the band-aid on. Yeah, if I didn't think it was broken, I would have just kept going to my destination, but I didn't think I had a way back to my hotel. So yeah, that's the only reason I stopped. I wasn't scared at all for that, which is super weird. And then I also was thinking while I was flying that if the plane crashed, at least I would be able to put my 100 hours playing The Forest to use. So yeah, fear is weird with me. Are we sure I only have 6 mental disorders? And finally, in at number 1, Springtrap. I saw multiple tweets saying that the FNAF movie was going to be about the first 3 games in the series, which didn't seem all that logical to me, because why would they try and cram 3 games and nearly 40 years of content into one movie? We all know that usually doesn't go over well. And while Fazbear's Fright may have opened in 2023, which makes the timing perfect, we weren't really sure that it was true. Until an Instagram user in a now deleted post shared photos from their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which included multiple Springtrap heads, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering everything else, it basically confirms Springtrap to be in the movie. Probably towards the end if they're doing it linearly, but it could be jumping around a bit depending on the plot. It's also worth noting that there's another head in the background of the last image of the collage that seems to be extremely similar to Monty after being broken in Security Breach. But considering how Security Breach takes place years after FNAF 6, meaning decades after FNAF 3, it's unlikely that he'll appear in this movie, but probably in the 3rd that they have planned, considering how Matthew Lillard did sign contracts for 3 films. So they could already be working on their other props, but these could also just simply be remains from another project. In at 10, Game Theorist Cop. Now, in another video, I said that YouTubers were invited to take a look at the set, but MatPat wasn't one of them. And game theory is such a huge influence on the game's success that it really deserves its own mention. Something more than a possible FNAF video game cameo montage a la Free Guy, but I think that the show of game theory specifically should have its own reference or character, as maybe even a crime podcast or online conspiracy website trying to sort out the mysteries of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I don't know, I think that might be one of the better ways that they can incorporate it, or maybe there's just an investigating detective that's named Matthew or is played by MatPat. I don't know, I just think that a little extra nod to the guy that really made the majority of us aware of the series is definitely deserved, if not required, especially by the fans. I wouldn't have known about FNAF if it wasn't for MatPat choosing it over Slenderman because of a poll, so yeah. But he also said that he didn't have an idea for what that Slenderman theory could have been. So maybe he would have just went with FNAF anyway, but I think we can all agree that MatPat deserves at least a reference in the movie. In at 9, Ballora. Some believe that Ballora was intended to be a form of mother figure for the Afton kids once their mother left, or died, or was killed, or whatever happened to her. Maybe she never even existed. This is based off the idea that the Mini-Renas and Ballora are basically kind of like a family, and that Ballora is a mother to the Mini-Renas, and the fact that there would be one for each Afton kid and then another one that's spare. This could just be William having mommy issues, or it could be that there is a secret 4th Afton kid like I've proposed in the past, although I highly doubt it. And if that is the case, maybe Vanessa is supposed to be that kid, hence why she'd be a robot. Or Vanessa just is the human version of Ballora, so the kids wouldn't freak out, because baby can change between human and not human in the books, and yeah. But then again, it could just be Afton wanting to be treated like a kid, and have someone to hold him and make the pain go away. I mean, it's definitely not the healthiest option, but it's something Sigmund Freud would be proud of. So, yeah, if she is supposed to be a mother to the kids, if she's not in the movie, it's gonna be kinda confusing. And at 8, Markiplier. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and he implied quite heavily that he will be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know, there was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There's a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which is his way of saying that he's at least making an appearance, cause why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have the free time to be in the movie? But within the FNAF community, this man is also a behemoth. Having played through every game, most popular fan games, and then more, people call him the FNAF King. You can't think of FNAF without thinking of this man as well as matpat, okay? But mostly, that didn't really mean much, and he was just a fan of the series until November 25th, 2019 at 9 AM EST, when a Lumix official released the official launch trailer for FNAF AR Special Delivery on YouTube. In that 2-minute long trailer, we see Markiplier being the one advertising the Fazbear Funtime service, which the game is based off. So, yeah, he's already, like, I don't know what's going on. It's unknown, like, what character he's playing, but in all honesty, Markiplier was already canon in the games, or I guess technically in the game lore, so he might as well be in the movie. Right? And if you guys are looking forward to the FNAF movie and want to know more about it, be sure you hit subscribe, because when we know, you'll know. Or maybe slightly after, because I still have the script. And it's 7, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be controversial, but Crying Child hasn't officially been cast. And I say this every time I bring it up, his death wasn't a Springlock failure, alright? I watched the matpat timeline recently. He says it was a Springlock failure, but it couldn't have been. The reason I know it wasn't a Springlock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, so no Springlocks would have had the chance of failing. Because the term Springlock failure refers to when the Springlock mechanisms that move robot parts away fail to keep those parts in place, snapping them back into animatronic mode, and then that's when you get filled with all of the metal bits, which is bad if someone's inside. But if you're in a robot mode, there's no spring locks that can fail because they're not being moved. Plus, there's no mechanisms inside the mouth because no parts of the human would be in the mouth. So yeah, the jaw just moves up and down. It would have had to be superpowered in order to crush the skull, something that only William would have been able to integrate, considering how, you know, he made the robots and is the suit technician and stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping Crying Child's in the movie. And while we assume that this Garrett character is meant to be Crying Child, it could very well not be, so I had to say it. Alright, I did. And at 6, Charlotte Emily. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Afton has ever had. Being his first direct victim and seemingly second indirect victim, Charlotte gets killed outside of one of the original pizzerias, despite desperate attempts from her father Henry to prevent that, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but then treat her as a priority, which is kind of selfish, especially if you know that your partner is going to be a serial killer, but you know, that's aside the point. However, when it gets trapped in a box and it's unable to actually make it out to Charlotte in time to save her, she ends up getting shanked. So, in another attempt, the puppet tries to save her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic and thus becoming one in a sense. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of life with the other animatronics, or I guess with the other victims of the original 5, resulting in ultimately William's undoing. But yeah, in a way, Charlotte is really the one he shouldn't have killed, but that's a whole other character. And basically, she needs to be in the movie, and she hasn't been cast, or at least hasn't been named directly. So I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe that's who Abby's supposed to be. Halfway through into number 5, Gregory. The main reason I want Gregory in this movie is because the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. The kid is the size of a 4-year-old, can fit inside of Glamrock Freddy's cake cavity. He can fit inside baby strollers and other various small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone, but he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a van, as well as identify a car battery, connect the jumper cables to that car battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharging every hour issue in one of the endings. So how the living hell does that character as a whole make any sense? And how do Freddy and Gregory make it to the hill without needing to recharge in that ending? Like, how do they solve that issue? I don't know, man. This kid knows more words than I do, but somehow is the size of a 3.5-year-old, maybe 4. No, okay? It makes absolutely no sense, and this kid's weird superpower is the reason Security Breach is so confusing. It would really only make sense if he is a robot that's supposed to mimic a toddler, but who's actually been on for decades and has been learning the entire time. So, if that is the case and he's been on for that long, it would be possible for him to appear in the movie. So he f***ing better. It only makes sense. In it for Scooby-Doo. This is purely because I think William Afton making a Scooby-Doo reference would be hilarious. Obviously, I don't think that it's going to happen because it would probably ruin the tone of the movie, but I don't know. Movies or shows referencing an actor's previous work is not an unheard thing. There's entire compilations of series referencing previous movies and shows that their actors starred in or guested in or whatever it be. With shows from the Arrowverse talking about Victor Garber and the Titanic, or Brandon Ruth returning as Superman, but also Supernatural had a whole episode where Jared and Jensen played Sam and Dean in a world where Supernatural was a TV show. So they played their characters playing themselves. So yeah, productions making references to our world's dynamic in their scripts is nothing new. It's like when Bones had Emily and Zooey Deschanel on as like cousins in the show, but then one of the characters is like, oh, you two could be sisters. Okay, come on. Okay? And while those may seem like extreme examples, this is a series where a serial killer dies, possesses a hard drive, gets scanned into a VR game, and then is able to possess another person's brain and control them into bringing his body, which is stuck in a robot suit, back from death. So yeah, it's really not that far out of the question to have Afton say zoinks, or to have a dog that's called Scooby like walk up to him and like interact, and then have Afton flip out on the dog to show that he's psycho. Okay, something like that. Just come on, that would be funny. You have to admit. Getting close to the end of number 3, Kelsey. The story The New Kid from 1:35 a.m., the third Fazbear Frights book, revolves around Devin, Mick, and Kelsey. Devin and Mick are outcasts from their class and aren't really all that popular. They aren't cool. They aren't me. Totally kidding, they're definitely me. But when the new kid Kelsey arrives at the school, they make a new friend, or try to. Despite Kelsey being charismatic and adored by everyone, he still decides to hang with these two, which doesn't seem accurate. Over time though, Devin grows jealous of Kelsey, since Kelsey is everything that he wants. So in an act of revenge, or to gain control like some serial killer origin story, Devin hatches a plan to lure Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's and trap him in a springlock suit for a few hours. To like try to humble him, I guess? I don't know why they think that you can trap someone in a springlock suit without killing them. But of course, the plan goes horribly wrong. After getting in the springlock suit, it fails, as expected, causing blood to soak into the fur of the animatronic and pool all around the ground because, you know, it's a book and they don't have to worry about game ratings. So Devin and Mick leave Kelsey for dead so they won't get in trouble, but then something doesn't feel right, so for some reason Devin returns to make sure that Kelsey's body is still in there, which is a horrible idea. So he sticks his hand in the animatronic mouth to make sure, I don't know why, and then snap. The spring locks fail again in his hand, not in the mouth because that's not where the spring locks are, and then Devin gets his hand stuck inside and bleeds out. But not before seeing a body in the suit with black hair instead of Kelsey's blonde. So I want this explained in the movie. I do. Cast a Kelsey, for God's sakes. There's no other, these characters don't have names that have appeared anywhere, so just cast a frickin' Kelsey, please, for the love of God. But ultimately, in at number 2, Katniss Everdeen. I also think it would be hilarious for Katniss Everdeen to appear in this movie. Not like as a way to connect the universes, but exclusively because of who is playing Mike. I mean, come on, okay? This guy's IMDb has him listed as being known for Hunger Games movies almost exclusively. Josh Hutcherson would not be where he is if it wasn't for those, and much like the Scooby-Doo or Shaggy reference, I think it would be funny to have like a Katniss thing in here, okay? Even if it's just a joke. Or make Mike really good with a bow and arrow, since like he took up the sport to try to relieve anger because his therapist suggested it or something, and then they're just like, oh, you're a natural Katniss Everdeen, or like, oh, you'd win the Hunger Games. I don't know, I think think that would be the funniest shit, alright? Come on, you gotta have a little comedy in something like this. And Scott seems like the kind of guy who would be down for that. He does all sorts of random, unexplained crap in his games. So like a couple of passing references to past work that the actors have done, it wouldn't be out of nowhere. I personally would appreciate a Once Upon a Time Anna reference from the girl playing Vanessa, Elizabeth Lale. Please. And finally, in at number 1, Conspiracy Podcast. While Markiplier seems to be implying that he will be making an appearance in the movie, there are some other YouTubers that, like I said earlier, flat out just said that they were invited to check out the set and watch filming. The 4 that we know of course, being Dawko, as well as 8-Bit Ryan, Rizbowski, and Bazamalam, aka the Theory Thursday crew. From the looks of things, they're just going to vlog on the set and film content for the respective channels. However, there could be something more here, like maybe a cameo or a consultation kind of thing that they wouldn't have revealed for obvious reasons. Although consultation would be a far less of like a major thing, but considering how Scott is on set, they wouldn't really need it, but it could also just be like from like a fan's perspective kind of thing so that we can understand the story of the movie and have it not get confused since we don't know everything about the games. I don't know. They could be doing something like that, but they could also be doing exactly what they did on Thursdays as characters in the movie. So, could Theory Thursday actually be a podcast within the FNAF universe? I guess we'll have to wait for the movie to find out.